A wife drinks poison meant for her husband, not to save his life, but to prove he never saw her at all. In the heart of Chicago's underground empire, Elena Moretti has spent 6 years as the invisible queen beside crime lord Adrian Moretti. When she spots death swirling in his wine glass, she faces a choice that will shatter everything. Warn the man who forgot her birthday 4 years running, or swallow the poison herself and force him to finally see what he's been losing. If you want to know whether love can survive 18 inches of silence, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city below, so I can see how far this story travels. The Aurelius Club occupied the 53rd floor of a steel tower in downtown Chicago, where men who controlled shipping lanes and politicians dined on plates worth more than most people's cars. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city that glittered like scattered diamonds, oblivious to the wolves dining above. Elena Moretti sat 18 inches from her husband and might as well have been invisible. Adrian's thumbs moved across his phone screen with the precision of a surgeon, his jaw tight as he read something that made the muscle there jump. Numbers, probably. Adrian's world had always been numbers, shipments, territories, percentages, profit margins. Clean data that required no emotional interpretation. Elena studied the candlelight playing across the white tablecloth, creating shadows that danced and disappeared. Much like her, really. The 09 Bordeaux, Mr. Moretti. The sommelier appeared at Adrian's elbow, a slender man with silver temples who handled the bottle like it contained liquid rubies. From your private reserve, shall I? Adrian didn't look up from his phone. Yeah. The sommelier's practiced hands worked the cork free with a whisper-soft pop. He poured 2 fingers into a crystal glass, swirled it professionally, then filled it properly, and set it before Adrian with the reverence of a priest presenting communion. Elena watched the ritual with the detached interest of someone observing a foreign ceremony. She'd stopped drinking wine 2 years ago after Adrian had failed to notice her trying to tell him she was pregnant with their twins. He'd been on a conference call to Milan. She'd miscarried 3 weeks later, alone in their bathroom while he finalized a warehouse acquisition in Gary. He still didn't know. Mrs. Moretti? The sommelier turned to her, bottle poised. May I offer you? Water's fine, Elena said quietly. The sommelier nodded and retreated. Adrian's phone buzzed. His fingers flew across the screen, forming responses to people who existed more vividly to him than the woman who shared his bed. Elena folded her napkin into smaller and smaller squares, a nervous habit from childhood that her mother had tried to break with a wooden spoon. The linen was Egyptian, probably cost more than the dress she was wearing. Everything in Adrian's world cost more than it should, including her dignity. Across the dining room, she caught sight of their reflection in the darkened windows. A handsome couple, Adrian in his charcoal suit, her in the emerald dress his assistant had selected and had delivered to the house with tags still attached. They looked like a spread from a luxury magazine. Beautiful, powerful, untouchable, utterly disconnected. The Peterson contract came through, Adrian said suddenly, still not looking at her. Minneapolis is ours by Friday. That's good, Elena replied, her voice carrying the right notes of wifely support she'd perfected over 6 years of marriage. Vittoria wants to expand into Detroit next, but Marco thinks we should consolidate first. Adrian finally set his phone face down on the table, reaching for his wine glass. What do you think? Elena blinked. Adrian was asking her opinion on business. This was new. Except he wasn't looking at her. His gaze had already drifted past her shoulder to the entrance, where Chicago's deputy mayor had just arrived with a woman decidedly not his wife. I think your mother's instincts are usually sound, Elena said carefully. Adrian lifted the wine glass, the Bordeaux catching the candlelight, turning it into liquid garnets. Marco's been pushing hard, though, aggressive. Vittoria thinks he's trying to prove something. The wine tilted toward Adrian's lips. That's when Elena saw it. Just a shimmer, really. A faint iridescence beneath the red, like oil on water. It caught the light wrong, moved wrong, existed wrong. For a heartbeat, she thought she'd imagined it, a trick of the candlelight, a reflection from the windows. Then the shimmer swirled, and Elena's blood turned to ice. She'd grown up in her father's restaurant in Little Italy, back when Chicago's neighborhoods still had clear boundaries, and everyone knew which families owned which blocks. She'd seen men poisoned twice before she turned 16. Once with arsenic and espresso, once with something her father never named, slipped into grappa at a wedding. Both times, the liquid had that same wrong shimmer, that same too perfect catch of light that didn't belong. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. 3 seconds, maybe 4, before Adrian drank. She could see it already. His first swallow, the confusion as his throat burned, the collapse, the chaos, the failure of his heart in some sterile hospital room while his mother and brother fought over who would inherit his empire. Adrian! The word caught in her throat. He wasn't listening. He never listened. His hand raised the glass higher. The wine touched his lower lip. Elena's mind fractured into 1,000 calculations, all arriving at the same devastating conclusion. If she warned him, he wouldn't hear her. He would drink anyway, annoyed at the interruption, convinced she was being dramatic or paranoid or seeking attention. How many times had she tried to tell him things? Important things? Adrian, I'm scared about the men who've been following me. Adrian, your daughter asked why you don't live with us anymore. Adrian, I think I'm losing myself. He'd heard none of it. His phone had buzzed, his attention had shifted, her words had evaporated like steam. 2 seconds now. Elena looked at the wine glass, at her husband's distracted face, at the 18 inches of white tablecloth between them that might as well have been the Grand Canyon. She made a choice. Her hand shot across the table, fast enough to startle Adrian into lowering his glass. Before he could speak, before he could ask what the hell she was doing, Elena wrapped her fingers around the crystal stem and brought it to her own lips. Elena, what? She drank. The Bordeaux hit her tongue first, rich, complex, perfectly aged. For a microsecond, she wondered if she'd been wrong, if the shimmer had been nothing, if she'd just made a complete fool of herself over candlelight and paranoia. Then the burn started. Not the pleasant warmth of alcohol, but something else. Something that felt like swallowing razors dipped in battery acid. The poison, because yes, it was absolutely poison, scorched down her throat and into her stomach, and Elena felt her body recognize the intrusion with animal panic. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against her plate. Elena! Adrian's voice came from very far away, distorted like he was shouting through water. The dining room tilted. The chandeliers stretched into starbursts. Elena's hands found the table edge, gripping hard enough that her knuckles went white. But her fingers had stopped responding correctly, sliding uselessly across the tablecloth. Somewhere, a woman screamed. Adrian was on his feet, his phone clattering to the floor, his hands on her shoulders. For the first time in 3 years, he was touching her deliberately, looking directly at her, seeing her. How bitter, Elena thought distantly, that it took dying to become visible. Her vision grayed at the edges. The pain in her chest bloomed outward, each heartbeat becoming a thunderclap of agony. She tried to speak, to tell Adrian something important, but her tongue had stopped working. What had she wanted to say? You forgot our anniversary. You missed Sophia's first words. You don't know that Marcus is afraid of the dark. You never asked why I stopped wearing my wedding ring. You haven't touched me in 14 months. I've been disappearing for years, and you never noticed until now. Elena's knees buckled. Adrian caught her, his arms strong and sure in a way they hadn't been since their honeymoon in Positano, back when he'd still looked at her like she mattered more than territory. Call 911! Adrian was roaring at someone, his voice cracking with something that might have been fear. Now, move! The deputy mayor was on his phone. The sommelier stood frozen, his face chalk white, the empty Bordeaux bottle still in his hand. Elena's heart stuttered, stopped, started again with a lurch that sent new waves of fire through her chest. She was dying. The realization arrived with strange clarity. Whatever had been in that wine was powerful enough to kill a man of Adrian's size and tolerance. She weighed 115 pounds and hadn't eaten since breakfast because she'd been too anxious about this dinner, about sitting across from her husband and pretending they were still a couple. Not enough body mass to dilute the poison, not enough food to slow absorption. She was dying, and Adrian was finally looking at her. His face swam above hers, sharp features blurred by her failing vision. Was he crying? Adrian never cried. Adrian Moretti, who'd once kneecapped a man for skimming profits without flinching, who'd inherited his father's empire at 24 and doubled it by 30, who treated emotion like a weakness to be eliminated, was crying. Stay with me, he was saying over and over, a desperate mantra. Elena, stay with me. Don't you dare. Don't you fucking dare. But she was so tired. 6 years of being invisible had worn her down to smoke and echoes. 6 years of sleeping alone in a king-size bed while her husband worked in his study until dawn. 6 years of birthday dinners where he showed up an hour late, if he showed up at all. 6 years of watching their children ask why daddy didn't play with them, didn't read to them, didn't see them. 6 years of ceasing to exist. Maybe this was easier. The pain was fading now, replaced by a spreading coldness that started in her fingers and toes and crept inward. Elena's eyes drifted closed. No! Adrian's hand cupped her face, rough and warm. Open your eyes. Elena, open your eyes. She tried. She really did. But her eyelids were so heavy, and the darkness was so welcoming. Paramedics are 3 minutes out, someone said. 3 minutes. Eternity and no time at all. Adrian's thumb brushed her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized she'd cried. I see you, he whispered, his voice breaking. Elena, I see you. I'm so sorry. I see you. Too late, she thought. Or maybe she said it aloud. She couldn't tell anymore. The world was going soft around the edges, like an old photograph left too long in sunlight. Voices faded. The pain faded. Everything faded except Adrian's face, finally focused on her, finally present, finally here. 6 years too late. Elena's heart gave one more weak flutter, then stopped. Vittoria Moretti received the call at 10:47 p.m. while reviewing quarterly reports in her Lake Forest estate. Mrs. Moretti, her head of security's voice was carefully neutral, which meant the news was catastrophic. There's been an incident at the Aurelius Club. Vittoria set down her reading glasses. In 40 years of running the family's interests, first beside her husband, then alone after a rival family's bomb had turned his car into shrapnel, she'd learned that incident could mean anything from a minor embarrassment to bodies in the street. Define incident. Elena collapsed during dinner with Adrian. They're transporting her to Northwestern Memorial now. Possible poisoning. Vittoria was moving before her security finished the sentence, her mind already 3 steps ahead. She grabbed her phone, her car keys, her coat. Where's Adrian? In the ambulance with her. Mrs. Moretti? A pause. It doesn't look good. Status on the wine? Secured. I have men bringing it to our lab now. Good. Vittoria's heels clicked across marble as she headed for the garage. Pull security footage from the club. I want to know everyone who went near that table, everyone who had access to the wine cellar, everyone who looked at my son wrong in the past month. And get Marco on the phone. Your other son is already at the hospital, ma'am. Of course he was. Vittoria's jaw tightened. Marco had always been good at appearing concerned, at playing the devoted brother while sharpening knives behind closed doors. She'd known for months that Marco was getting restless, chafing under Adrian's leadership, whispering to capos about new directions and fresh blood. She'd watched and waited, hoping her younger son would settle, would accept his role, would understand that ambition without wisdom was just another word for suicide. Apparently, she'd waited too long. The drive to Northwestern Memorial took 14 minutes. Vittoria spent them on the phone, her voice cold and precise, as she activated protocols that had been in place since her husband's death. Lock down the family's assets, increase security on the grandchildren, pull financials on Marco's known associates, trace every dollar he'd spent in the past 6 months. By the time she walked through the emergency room doors, flanked by 2 bodyguards who knew better than to let her out of their sight, Vittoria had a working theory and a list of 12 men who would need to disappear before sunrise. But first, she needed to know if her daughter-in-law would survive. Adrian stood in a private waiting room, his back to the door, his expensive suit splattered with wine and what might have been vomit. His shoulders were rigid, hands clenched at his sides, radiating the kind of barely controlled violence that usually preceded someone's death. Adrian? He spun, and Vittoria's breath caught. Her son looked shattered. Not angry, not calculating, not wearing any of the masks he'd perfected since childhood, just broken. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale, and when he spoke, his voice cracked like a teenager's. She's dying. The words came out flat, factual, obscene. The doctors said, what did they say? Vittoria kept her tone gentle, approaching her son the way she might approach a wounded animal. Her heart stopped in the ambulance. They got it started again, but the poison... Adrian's hand shook as he dragged them through his hair. It's in her bloodstream, attacking her organs. Liver, kidneys, heart. They don't know if they can... He broke off, turning away, and Vittoria saw his shoulders heave once, twice. She'd seen her son attend funerals without flinching. She'd watched him order executions over breakfast. She'd raised him to be steel-wrapped in human skin, to never show weakness, to treat emotion like enemy territory. She'd never seen him cry. "Tell me what happened," Vittoria said quietly. Adrian's laugh was ugly, self-lacerating. "I didn't even notice. There was poison in my wine, and I didn't fucking notice." Elena grabbed the glass and drank it herself, and I thought she was being dramatic, seeking attention. I was annoyed. He turned back to face his mother, and the self-hatred in his expression was so raw it hurt to witness. She was dying right in front of me, and I was annoyed. Vittoria moved closer, resting a hand on her son's arm. "Adrian, do you know when I last had a real conversation with her?" Adrian's voice rose, echoing off the sterile walls. "Do you know when I last asked her how her day was, or what she was thinking, or if she was happy?" He didn't wait for an answer. "I don't either. I can't remember. Months, maybe longer." Adrian's hands clenched into fists. "I knew Marco was making moves. I knew he was positioning himself. I've been watching him for weeks, waiting for him to show his hand. And I never fucking thought that he'd use Elena," Vittoria finished grimly. "I didn't protect her." Adrian's voice dropped to a whisper. "I was so busy protecting territory and shipments and profit margins that I didn't protect my own wife." A doctor appeared in the doorway, young and exhausted, his scrubs marked with suspicious stains. Both Morettis turned to him with identical expressions of predatory focus. "Mr. Moretti, your wife is stable. For now." The doctor's professionalism was admirable, given that he was addressing a crime lord with the power to erase him from existence. "We've identified the poison as a modified aconitine derivative, extremely potent. She's in intensive care and we're doing everything we can, but the next 24 hours are critical." "Can I see her?" Adrian asked. "Briefly, she's unconscious and intubated." The doctor hesitated. "I have to ask, do you have any idea who might have done this?" Adrian's smile was terrible to behold. "I have several ideas." The doctor wisely didn't press. Elena lay in a hospital bed surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, keeping her alive through chemistry and force of will. An IV drip fed clear fluids into her arm. A ventilator breathed for her. Monitors tracked vitals that looked more like a battlefield than a body. Adrian stood at the door for a long moment, unable to move. She looked so small. Elena had always been petite, 5'3", slender, with long dark hair and eyes the color of good whiskey. But hooked up to machines, unconscious and fragile, she looked like she might disappear entirely. Maybe she already had, Adrian thought with sickening clarity. Maybe Elena had been disappearing for years, fading a little more each day, and he'd been too blind to notice. He forced himself forward, pulled a chair close to her bedside, and took her hand. Her skin was cool, her fingers limp. He'd held this hand when they got married, when she'd gone into labor with the twins, when they'd buried his father. When was the last time he'd held it just because? "I'm sorry." The words felt pathetically inadequate. "Elena, I'm so sorry." The machines beeped their indifferent rhythm. "I don't know if you can hear me," Adrian continued, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I don't know if you'd want to, even if you could, but I need you to know..." What? What did she need to know? That he'd forgotten her birthday 3 years running? That he'd missed their daughter's dance recital because of a meeting that could have been rescheduled? That he couldn't remember the last time he'd told her she was beautiful or important or loved? That he'd taken the most precious thing in his life and treated it like furniture? "I see you now," Adrian whispered. "I know that's not enough. I know I'm 6 years too late. But I see you, Elena, and if you come back, when you come back, I swear to you I'll do better. I'll be better." The ventilator hissed. Elena's chest rose and fell mechanically. "Please come back," Adrian said, his voice breaking. "Please." Vittoria found Marco in the main waiting area, sitting with calculated casualness, scrolling through his phone like a man without a care in the world. Her younger son had inherited his father's dark good looks and her own sharp intelligence. He wore expensive suits, charmed politicians' wives, and had the kind of smile that made people trust him right up until he ruined them. "Marco." Vittoria's voice could have frozen nitrogen. "Walk with me." Marco looked up, his expression perfectly calibrated concern. "Mother, how's Elena?" "Alive." Vittoria turned without waiting to see if he'd follow. She knew he would. For all his ambition, Marco still feared her. They walked through sterile corridors in silence until Vittoria found an empty consultation room and shut the door. The click of the lock was very loud. "Tell me," Vittoria said, turning to face her son, "about your meeting with Vincent Calabrese last Tuesday." Marco's face didn't change, but his stillness gave him away. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Because I have photographs of you at his restaurant in Bridgeport. I have recordings of you discussing territorial realignment. I have bank records showing you moved $200,000 through 3 shell companies last week." Vittoria stepped closer. "Would you like me to continue?" "I'm allowed to have business interests. You're allowed to breathe because I permit it." Vittoria's voice never rose, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "You poisoned your brother's wine." "That's ridiculous. The sommelier was on Vincent's payroll. The wine came from a case you had delivered to the club's cellar 3 weeks ago. The poison was purchased through one of your contractors in Gary." Vittoria recited the facts like a coroner listing cause of death. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Marco's jaw tightened. For a moment, Vittoria saw the little boy who'd smashed his brother's toys because Adrian got the bigger bedroom, who'd cheated at cards because he couldn't stand to lose, who'd always needed to prove he was better. "He's weak," Marco said finally. "Adrian's gone soft. He's so worried about legitimacy and politics that he's forgotten what we are, what this family is built on." "And what's that?" "Power." Marco's eyes glittered. "Real power. Not compromise and negotiation, actual control. Adrian wants to play businessman. I want to run an empire. By murdering your brother. It would have been quick, painless." Marco shrugged. "Better than watching him run everything our father built into the ground." Vittoria studied her youngest son and felt something very old and very tired crack inside her chest. She'd known, on some level, that this day would come. Marco had always been hungry, always grasping, always convinced the world owed him more. But she'd hoped. Foolish, perhaps, but she'd hoped he'd grow past it. "You didn't account for Elena," Vittoria said. "Elena's a ghost. Adrian barely knows she exists. And yet she threw herself on a grenade for him." "Stupidity isn't heroism." Marco's tone was dismissive. "She probably didn't even realize what she was doing." Vittoria shook her head slowly. "You understand nothing about loyalty, about love, about what actually builds an empire that lasts." "I understand that sentiment is weakness." "No." Vittoria's voice was soft, almost gentle. "You understand that you're my son, and that I raised you, and that you carry my blood. And those are the only reasons you'll walk out of this room alive." Marco froze. "But you will walk out of this city," Vittoria continued. "Tonight, you'll take nothing but the clothes on your back. You'll go somewhere far away. I don't care where. And you'll never use the Moretti name again. You'll never contact anyone in this family. You'll cease to exist." "You can't." "I can and I will." Vittoria's eyes were chips of ice. "Because the alternative is that I tell Adrian what you did, and we both know he won't stop at exile. Not after this. Not after Elena." The reality of his situation finally seemed to penetrate Marco's arrogance. His face went pale. "Mother, you're not my son anymore." The words came out flat, final. "You stopped being my son the moment you put poison in your brother's wine. Now you're just a problem I'm solving." Vittoria pulled out her phone and made a call. "Bring the car around to the east entrance. We have a passenger who needs a ride to O'Hare." She looked at Marco one last time, this beautiful, brilliant, broken boy she'd birthed 32 years ago. "You have 10 minutes, she said. "Use them wisely. Because if you're still in Chicago when the sun comes up, I won't stop Adrian from finding you. And Marco, He looked at her with something that might have been tears. "He will find you," Oz said. At 2:37 a.m., Elena's heart stopped again. Adrian was in the chair beside her bed, his hand wrapped around hers, when the monitors flatlined into a single, devastating tone. Medical staff flooded the room, pushing him aside, working with the choreographed efficiency of people who fought death daily and didn't always win. Someone charged the defibrillator. Someone else counted compressions. Adrian stood against the wall, forgotten, watching them try to restart his wife's heart. This was his fault. Every failed shock, every desperate compression, every second Elena spent not breathing, his fault. He'd been so focused on building an empire that he'd never noticed he was losing his kingdom. So obsessed with appearing strong that he'd forgotten strength meant protecting the people who mattered. So determined to be his father's son that he'd become exactly the kind of man who lost everything worth keeping. The lead doctor called for another shock. Elena's body arced off the table. The monitor showed nothing. Then, a beep. Another. A rhythm, shaky and weak, but there. "We've got her," someone said. Adrian's knees nearly buckled. A nurse caught his arm, steadying him, her expression sympathetic in the way of someone who'd seen too many people nearly lose too much. The medical team stabilized Elena again, adjusted medications, checked vitals. The lead doctor approached Adrian, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "Mr. Moretti, your wife's condition is extremely critical. Her body is fighting the poison, but she's very weak. The next code, she might not—" He stopped, mercy preventing him from finishing. "I understand," Adrian said roughly. "We're doing everything we can." "I know." The doctor left, the nurses left. The machines kept up their vigilant monitoring, and Adrian returned to his chair, to Elena's bedside, to the hand he wouldn't let go of again. "You need to come back," he told her, his voice hoarse from stress and unshed tears. "Not for me. I don't deserve it. But for Sophia and Marcus, they need their mother. They need you." Elena's face remained still, peaceful, absent. "They asked about you yesterday," Adrian continued, talking to fill the silence, to keep her tethered. "Sophia wanted to know when you'd do her hair again. She said only, you know how to make the braids not hurt. And Marcus wouldn't go to sleep without Mr. Buttons, the stuffed rabbit you bought him. He told me Mr. Buttons only works when you're there to say goodnight." Adrian's throat tightened. "I didn't know that. I didn't know about the braids, or the rabbit, or 1,000 other things. I've been living in the same house as my children, and I don't know them, because I never paid attention. I never slowed down enough to see what was right in front of me." He looked at Elena's sleeping face, remembering the woman he'd married 7 years ago. She'd been working as a hostess at her father's restaurant, studying for a business degree at night, fierce and funny and unimpressed by his money. He'd courted her for 3 months before she'd agreed to a date. Another 6 before she'd said yes to marriage. "You made me work for it," Adrian said, almost smiling. "Remember? You kept saying you'd seen too many mob wives end up miserable, and you weren't interested in becoming another one. I promised you'd be different. I promised you'd be my partner, my equal, my everything." Another broken promise. "I don't know how to fix this," Adrian admitted to the machines, to the universe, to his unconscious wife. "I don't know how to become the man you needed me to be. But if you come back, Elena, if you give me another chance, I'll figure it out. I swear I will." The ventilator breathed, the monitors beeped. Elena slept on. And Adrian kept talking, his words a prayer to a woman who couldn't hear him, a confession to the ghost he'd made of his marriage, a promise to do better if only he got the chance. If only she came back. If only 18 inches wasn't too far to reach across after all. Dawn broke over Chicago with the kind of pale, indifferent light that seemed to mock the chaos inside Northwestern Memorial's intensive care unit. Adrian hadn't moved from Elena's bedside in 8 hours, his hand still wrapped around hers, his body folded into the uncomfortable chair like he'd taken root there. Victoria found him at 6:15 a.m., still in his ruined suit, unshaven and hollow-eyed. "Adrian," she set a cup of coffee on the table beside him. "You need to eat something." "I'm fine." "You're not." Victoria pulled up a second chair, her movements precise despite her own sleepless night. "When was the last time you ate?" Adrian tried to remember and couldn't. Yesterday's lunch, maybe? before the dinner at the Aurelius Club that had detonated his entire world. Doesn't matter. It matters if you collapse. Vittoria's tone left no room for argument. Elena needs you functional, not martyring yourself in a hospital chair. The mention of Elena's name made Adrian's grip tighten reflexively around his wife's hand. Her fingers remained limp, unresponsive. The ventilator continued its mechanical rhythm, breathing for her because her body had forgotten how. "Marco's gone," Vittoria said quietly. Adrian's head snapped toward his mother. "What?" "I put him on a plane to Sao Paulo 3 hours ago. He won't be back." Vittoria's expression was carved from granite. "I have people there who will make sure he understands the terms of his exile." "You should have let me handle it." "No." Vittoria's voice was soft but absolute. "You would have killed him, and while he deserves it, I won't let you carry that weight. Not with your brother. That's my burden to bear." Adrian wanted to argue, to rage that Marco had tried to murder him and had nearly succeeded in killing Elena instead. But the exhaustion was too deep, the grief too raw. He just nodded. "He confessed?" Adrian asked. "He bragged." Vittoria's mouth twisted with disgust. "Called it a necessary evolution. Said you'd gone soft, that the family needed stronger leadership." She paused. "He called Elena a ghost, said you barely knew she existed." The words landed like physical blows. Adrian flinched, his free hand clenching into a fist against his thigh. "He was right about that part," Adrian said, his voice scraped raw. "Wasn't he?" Vittoria studied her son with the same sharp assessment she'd once used to evaluate business deals and potential threats. After a long moment, she reached out and covered his clenched fist with her hand. "What matters now is what you do next," she said. Marco saw weakness where there was actually something much more dangerous. Something he never understood. "What's that?" "Love." Vittoria's smile was sad. "It makes men like us vulnerable. But it also makes us capable of things ambition alone never could." Before Adrian could respond, the door opened. Dr. Sarah Chen, the toxicologist who'd been overseeing Elena's treatment, entered with a tablet and an expression that gave nothing away. "Mr. Moretti, Mrs. Moretti." Dr. Chen nodded to them both. "I have Elena's latest blood work." Adrian's entire body tensed. "And?" "The poison levels are decreasing, slowly but consistently. Her liver and kidney function are improving." "Doctor." Chen pulled up charts on her tablet, showing lines and numbers that meant life or death. "She's fighting. Her body is metabolizing the toxin better than we expected." "But?" Adrian heard the unspoken caveat. "But she's still critical. The damage to her heart is significant. We won't know the full extent until if she regains consciousness." Dr. Chen's professionalism softened slightly. "I've seen cases like this go either way, Mr. Moretti. The next 36 hours will tell us which way your wife's going." It wasn't the reassurance Adrian desperately wanted, but it was something, a thread of hope in the darkness. "Can I do anything?" he asked. "Anything at all?" Dr. Chen glanced at Elena, then back at Adrian. "Talk to her. Studies show that familiar voices can help. Even if she can't respond, she might hear you on some level." After the doctor left, Adrian sat in silence, staring at his wife's still face. "Talk to her." About what? What did he have to say that mattered? What words could possibly bridge the canyon he'd carved between them? "I should go check on the children," Vittoria said, rising. "They'll be waking up soon. They'll want to know about their mother." Adrian's stomach clenched. Sophia and Marcus, 4 years old, identical twins with Elena's dark hair and his gray eyes. They'd been at Vittoria's estate since last night, shielded from the crisis, probably confused about why both parents had disappeared. "What are you telling them?" Adrian asked. "That mommy is sick, and the doctors are helping her get better. That daddy is staying with her to make sure she's okay." Vittoria paused at the door. "Would you like me to bring them here?" Adrian looked at Elena, hooked to machines, her face pale as paper, a tube down her throat. "No, not yet. I don't want them to see her like this." "They're stronger than you think." "They're 4, Mother." "Yes. And they love their mother. They might want to say goodbye, just in case." "Don't!" Adrian's voice cracked. "Don't say that. She's going to make it. She has to." Vittoria's expression softened in a way few people ever saw. She crossed back to Adrian and pressed a kiss to the top of his head, a gesture from his childhood that made his throat tight. "Then fight for her," Vittoria said quietly, "the way she fought for you." After his mother left, Adrian sat alone with Elena and the machines and the weight of every moment he'd wasted. The morning light strengthened, spilling through the window, illuminating all the details he'd never bothered to notice before. The small scar on Elena's wrist from when she'd burned herself taking cookies out of the oven for the twins' birthday party. Adrian had been in New York that day, finalizing a shipping contract. The way her hair, even disheveled and unwashed, still caught the light like dark silk. When was the last time he'd told her she was beautiful? Their wedding day, maybe? The callus on her right middle finger from writing. Elena had been working on something. A novel? A memoir? Using the antique desk in the guest room that Adrian had converted into his third office without asking her permission first. He didn't even know what she was writing. Had never asked. "I don't know where to start," Adrian said aloud, his voice rough in the quiet room. "The doctor said I should talk to you, but I don't know what to say. Everything I think of sounds like an excuse or an apology or a lie." The ventilator hissed. Elena didn't stir. "Maybe I should start with the truth," Adrian continued, the words coming easier now, like confession. "The truth is, I'm terrified. Not of the business or Marco or any of the usual things. I'm terrified that you'll wake up and realize you're better off without me. That these 6 years were enough proof that I'm exactly what you warned me you didn't want to become. A husband who turned his wife into furniture." He shifted in the chair, his body aching from hours of stillness. But he didn't let go of Elena's hand. "Do you remember what you said to me the night I proposed?" Adrian asked. "We were at Navy Pier and I had this whole elaborate setup planned. Fireworks, champagne, a string quartet. But you stopped me before I even got down on one knee." The memory surfaced with painful clarity. Elena in a summer dress, the breeze off Lake Michigan catching her hair, her eyes serious as she'd placed a hand on his chest. "You said, 'Before you ask me that question, I need to know something. Am I going to be your wife? Or am I going to be a mob wife? Because those are two different things, Adrian. One is a partnership, the other is a cage." Adrian's voice dropped to a whisper. "I promised you partnership. I swore you'd never be an accessory or an afterthought, that we'd build something together that was ours, separate from the family business, separate from all of it." He looked at their joined hands, his thumb tracing the bare spot on her ring finger where her wedding band used to sit. He hadn't even noticed when she'd stopped wearing it. 3 months ago? 6? "I broke that promise," Adrian said. "I put you in the cage anyway. And the worst part is, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I just kept adding bars. One missed dinner, one forgotten anniversary, one more night choosing work over you, until you couldn't breathe anymore." A nurse entered quietly to check Elena's vitals, made notes on her chart, and left without speaking. Adrian barely registered her presence. "Sophia drew a picture last week," he continued when they were alone again. "Vittoria showed it to me. It was our family, you, me, the twins. Except I was standing way over on the edge of the paper by myself, holding a phone. And Sophia had drawn you and her and Marcus all holding hands on the other side." Adrian's chest constricted at the memory of that crayon drawing, at the way his daughter had rendered his isolation so simply, so devastatingly. "Marcus asked me yesterday why I don't live with them anymore. He's 4 years old, Elena. He lives in the same house as me, sleeps 3 doors down from our bedroom, and he thinks I don't live there." Adrian's voice broke. What kind of father, what kind of husband, becomes so absent that his own son doesn't recognize he's home? The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Elena's chest rose and fell with mechanical precision. "I want to blame the business," Adrian said. "That would be easy, wouldn't it? Say that running the family took all my time, that I was doing it for us, for our future, for the kids. But that's bullshit. Plenty of men run companies and still manage to show up for their families. The truth is, I chose the work because it was simpler. It had clear metrics, profit, territory, power. I understood how to win at that game." He leaned forward, resting his forehead against the edge of Elena's bed. "But you? Us? That was complicated. That required me to be vulnerable, to be present, to be something other than Antonio Moretti's son. And I didn't know how to do that, so I just stopped trying. I let the distance grow until it felt normal. Until I could sit 18 inches from you at dinner and not even see you. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications, offering Adrian food he couldn't eat and rest he wouldn't take. Around noon, Vittoria called with an update on the children. Sophia had asked 3 times when Mommy was coming home. Marcus had refused to eat breakfast and was carrying around the stuffed rabbit Elena had given him, clutching it like a talisman. They need to see you, Vittoria said gently. Even if it's just over video call. They need to know their father exists. Adrian arranged a FaceTime call from the hospital hallway, stepping away from Elena's room for the first time since they'd brought her in. His face appeared on Vittoria's tablet screen, and immediately 2 small faces pressed close to the camera. "Daddy!" Sophia's voice was bright with relief. "Where's Mommy?" Adrian's heart clenched. "Mommy's sick, sweetheart. She's resting so she can get better." "When is she coming home?" Marcus asked, his lower lip trembling. "Soon, buddy. The doctors are taking really good care of her." "Can we talk to her?" Sophia wanted to know. "Maybe if we sing her the Get Better song, she'll feel better faster." The Get Better song, something Elena had made up, apparently, to sing to the twins when they were sick. Adrian had never heard it, had never been there for those moments. "Mommy's sleeping right now," Adrian said carefully. "But when she wakes up, I promise you'll be the first people she sees, okay?" Both children nodded, but Marcus's eyes were filling with tears. "Is Mommy gonna die like Goldfish?" Adrian's breath caught. Goldfish had been Marcus's pet, a small orange fish that had lasted exactly 3 weeks before floating to the top of its bowl. Elena had handled that crisis alone too, while Adrian was in Detroit negotiating a contract. "No," Adrian said firmly. "Mommy is not going to die. She's strong, and she's fighting really hard to come back to us." "Daddy?" Sophia's voice was small. "Are you coming home too?" The question hit Adrian like a fist to the chest. His daughter was asking if her father was coming home, to the house where he slept, ate, technically resided, because his presence there had become so sporadic, so meaningless, that it qualified as a special event. "Yes, baby. When Mommy's better, we're both coming home. And I'm going to be there more, okay? I'm going to do better." After the call ended, Adrian stood in the hallway for a long moment, his phone clutched in his hand. His children's faces burned into his memory. Sophia's hope, Marcus's fear, their shared uncertainty about whether their father was a permanent fixture in their lives or just a visitor who occasionally remembered they existed. He returned to Elena's room with new resolve crystallizing in his chest. "Our kids are terrified," he told his unconscious wife. "And it's my fault. Not just because you're here, but because I've made them doubt whether their father is actually part of their lives. I've been so busy being Antonio Moretti's heir that I forgot to be Sophia and Marcus's dad." Adrian settled back into his chair, reclaiming Elena's hand. "That changes now," he said. "Whether you come back to me or not, and you will, because you're the strongest person I know, that changes. I'm going to learn how to braid Sophia's hair. I'm going to figure out why Marcus won't sleep without Mr. Buttons. I'm going to show up for school meetings and dance recitals and breakfast. I'm going to be present." The door opened again, and this time it was Dr. Chen, with another doctor Adrian didn't recognize, an older man with kind eyes and gray temples. "Mr. Moretti, this is Dr. Raymond Foster, our head of cardiology," Dr. Chen said. "We need to discuss Elena's heart damage." Adrian straightened, dread coiling in his stomach. "How bad is it?" Dr. Foster pulled up scans on a tablet, images of Elena's heart that looked like abstract art to Adrian's untrained eye. The poison caused significant inflammation of the heart muscle, myocarditis. Combined with the cardiac arrest, there's been some permanent damage. Define some. "Her heart function is currently at about 40% of normal," Dr. Foster said carefully. "With time and treatment, that may improve. But Mr. Moretti, you need to understand that even if Elena survives this, when she survives this," Adrian interrupted. Dr. Foster nodded, accepting the correction. "When she survives this, she may have chronic heart issues, reduced stamina, increased risk of arrhythmia, possible need for medication long term. Her life won't be the same." Adrian looked at Elena, at the woman who'd thrown herself on a metaphorical grenade because she'd believed he wouldn't listen to her warning, Who'd chosen potential death over being ignored one more time? I don't care about the same, Adrian said quietly. I care about her being alive. Whatever comes after, we'll handle it, together. The doctors exchanged glances. Then Dr. Chen stepped forward. There's something else you should know. When Elena regains consciousness... When? Adrian repeated. When she regains consciousness, Dr. Chen continued, there may be psychological trauma in addition to the physical damage. She experienced a near-death event. She made a choice to drink poison. Those aren't things people just bounce back from. You're saying she might need therapy. I'm saying she'll definitely need support, Dr. Chen said. Medical, emotional, psychological. This isn't something you can fix by yourself, Mr. Moretti. She's going to need a team. After the doctors left, Adrian sat in the growing afternoon light and thought about teams, about support systems, about all the ways he'd failed to be either for his wife. Elena had carried their marriage alone for 6 years. She'd raised their children essentially as a single parent. She'd managed a household, maintained relationships with family, dealt with the unique pressures of being married to a crime lord, all while slowly disappearing from his awareness. And when she'd needed him most, when poison had been literally inches from his lips, she'd protected him anyway. I don't deserve you, Adrian said aloud. I'm not saying that for pity or sympathy. It's just a fact. You've given me 6 years of loyalty and love and patience, and I've given you nothing but absence and neglect. You should have left me years ago. He paused, imagining what Elena might say to that. Knowing her, she'd point out that she'd stayed because she'd loved him, because she'd believed in the man she'd married, the one who'd promised partnership and equality, because she'd hoped he'd wake up before it was too late. You were almost too late, Adrian whispered. Another few seconds, and I would have drunk that wine. I would have died never knowing what I'd lost, never understanding that the most valuable thing in my life was sitting 18 inches away, invisible because I'd stopped looking. The light shifted. Evening crept toward the windows. Adrian remained in his chair, keeping vigil, maintaining his promise not to leave Elena's side. Around 8 p.m., Vittoria returned with a bag from Adrian's house, clean clothes, toiletries, his phone charger. She also brought a folder of documents that required his signature, business that couldn't wait even for a wife in intensive care. I can handle most of this, Vittoria said, setting the folder on a table, but there are a few decisions only you can make. Adrian glanced at the folder with something close to revulsion. A week ago, he would have torn through those documents immediately, prioritizing business over everything. Now, they felt like relics from someone else's life. Tomorrow, he said. Unless something's on fire, it can wait until tomorrow. Vittoria's expression flickered with surprise, then approval. All right. Mother? Adrian stopped her before she could leave. When you married Dad, did he see you? Really see you? Vittoria was quiet for a long moment, her hand on the door handle. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 40 years of marriage, widowhood, and survival. Your father was a complicated man, she said. Brilliant, ruthless, capable of great tenderness and great cruelty, sometimes in the same breath. He saw me when it mattered, when I needed him to be strong, when the family needed leadership, when our enemies needed to understand that I was just as dangerous as he was. She turned to face Adrian fully. But did he see me when I was tired? When I was scared? When I just needed my husband instead of the head of the Moretti family? Vittoria's smile was sad. No, not often, and I learned to live with that absence, because that was the deal I made when I married into this life. Elena shouldn't have to make that deal, Adrian said. No, Vittoria agreed. She shouldn't, and the fact that you understand that now, even if it took nearly losing her to see it, means there's hope for you yet. After Vittoria left, Adrian tried to sleep in the chair, but couldn't. His mind wouldn't quiet, replaying 6 years of missed moments, accumulated failures, opportunities lost to check his phone or take a call or handle one more urgent matter that had seemed important at the time. Around midnight, one of the monitors started beeping erratically. Adrian was on his feet instantly, his heart hammering, as a nurse rushed in to check Elena's vitals. What's happening? The nurse studied the readouts, made adjustments, and the beeping settled. Just an arrhythmia, common with the heart damage. Nothing to worry about. But Adrian's pulse didn't settle for another 20 minutes. He tasted that terror again, that certainty that he was about to lose her, and it left him shaking. He returned to Elena's side, gripping her hand tighter than before. "You're scaring the hell out of me," he told her. "Every beep, every alarm. I think you're leaving. I think I'm going to have to explain to our children why their mother isn't coming home. Why I was too blind to protect the most important person in our lives." Adrian's voice cracked. "I need you to fight, Elena. I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything, but I'm asking anyway. Fight. Come back. Give me a chance to do this right, please." The hours bled together. Night deepened. The hospital settled into its nocturnal rhythm of quiet beeps and soft footsteps and distant conversations about life and death. Adrian dozed fitfully, his head on the edge of Elena's bed, his hand never releasing hers. He dreamed of poison swirling in wine, of Elena's face as she drank it, of the moment her eyes had gone glassy and unfocused, and he'd finally seen her. He woke to dawn light and Dr. Chen entering with her tablet. "Mr. Moretti," her tone was carefully neutral. "Elena's blood work shows continued improvement. We're going to try reducing her sedation today, see if she can breathe on her own." Adrian's exhaustion vanished. "Does that mean—" "It means her body is healing. Whether she'll wake up, when she'll wake up, what condition she'll be in when she does." Dr. Chen shook her head. "We won't know until we know. But this is progress." Progress. Such a small word for such enormous hope. After the doctor left, Adrian looked at his wife's sleeping face and felt something shift in his chest. Not certainty, he was too experienced with disappointment for that, but possibility. A thread of chance that this nightmare might have a different ending than the one he deserved. "You're fighting," he said softly. "I knew you would. You've always been stronger than me, Elena. Stronger than all of us." He leaned forward, pressing his lips to her forehead in the first deliberate gesture of affection he'd offered in longer than he could remember. "Keep fighting," Adrian whispered against her skin. "Please keep fighting. I'll be right here. I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again." The machines beeped, the morning strengthened, and Elena Moretti, the woman who'd refused to be invisible even in dying, continued her slow, stubborn journey back toward life. The medical team gathered in Elena's room at 9 a.m. on the third day, a small army of specialists converging around the woman who'd swallowed death meant for someone else. Dr. Chen led the group, her movements precise, as she explained the sedation reduction protocol to Adrian for the third time. "We'll decrease the medication gradually over the next few hours," she said, checking the IV lines. "If her vitals remain stable and she shows signs of respiratory effort, we'll remove the ventilator. But, Mr. Moretti, you need to understand this doesn't guarantee consciousness. Some patients take hours to wake up, some take days, and some don't wake up at all," Adrian finished, his voice flat. He'd heard all the caveats, all the careful hedging that doctors used when they couldn't promise miracles. "I understand." Dr. Chen's expression softened. "Talk to her. If she's going to fight her way back, your voice might be the anchor she needs." After the medical team left, Adrian remained in his chair, Elena's hand still wrapped in his. 3 days of keeping vigil had left him hollowed out, stripped down to raw nerve endings and desperate hope. He'd showered exactly once, in the private bathroom attached to Elena's suite, and only because Vittoria had threatened to have security drag him there. He'd eaten when his mother forced food into his hands, slept in fragments that left him more exhausted than restful. But he hadn't left Elena's side for more than 10 minutes at a time. "They're reducing your sedation," Adrian told her, his thumb tracing circles on her palm the way he had for 72 hours straight. "That means you get to decide if you want to come back to us, to Sophia and Marcus, to me, if you can forgive me enough to even try." The ventilator continued its mechanical breathing, but Adrian thought, maybe imagined, that Elena's chest was moving slightly on its own between the machine's cycles. "I've been thinking about the last time we really talked," Adrian continued, his voice rough from overuse and emotion. "Not about schedules or the kids' doctor appointments or whether we needed more milk. An actual conversation. Do you remember?" He did, now that he'd forced himself to excavate the memory. 8 months ago, maybe 9. They'd been in the kitchen late at night, Elena making tea, Adrian reviewing contracts at the island. She'd asked him something about his father, about what Antonio Moretti had been like before the violence and paranoia had consumed him. Adrian had given her a 3-sentence answer and returned to his paperwork. Elena had taken her tea and disappeared upstairs. He'd worked until 4 a.m. and never noticed she'd been reaching out, trying to understand the man she'd married by understanding the legacy he carried. "I shut you down," Adrian said quietly. "You were trying to connect with me, and I shut you down because a shipping manifest felt more important than my wife's attempt to know me better." Hours crawled past. Nurses rotated through, checking vitals, adjusting medications, noting the gradual reduction in sedation. Adrian watched Elena's face for any sign of change, any flicker of awareness, but she remained still as carved marble. Around noon, her breathing pattern shifted. The ventilator cycled, and Elena's chest rose a fraction of a second before the machine pushed air into her lungs. Then again, and again. Adrian sat forward, his heart hammering. "Dr. Chen." The doctor appeared within seconds, as if she'd been hovering just outside the door. She examined Elena's breathing, checked the monitors, made notes on her tablet. "She's initiating breaths on her own," Dr. Chen confirmed, something like excitement breaking through her professional calm. "This is good, Mr. Moretti. This is very good. Can you take the tube out?" "Not yet. We need to see consistent respiratory effort for at least an hour, and her oxygen saturation needs to remain stable." Dr. Chen adjusted a setting on the ventilator. "But if she maintains this, we could extubate this afternoon." The next hour was the longest of Adrian's life. He counted each breath Elena took independently, watched the monitors like they held the secrets of the universe, and prayed to a higher power he'd stopped believing in after his father's murder. At 1:30 p.m., the medical team returned and began the extubation process. They reduced the ventilator settings further, watching Elena breathe more and more on her own. Her oxygen levels held steady. Her heart rate remained strong. "All right," Dr. Chen said finally. "We're going to remove the tube. Mr. Moretti, you'll need to step back, please." Adrian moved to the corner of the room, his hands clenched into fists, every muscle in his body taut with tension as the team worked. They deflated the cuff holding the tube in place, gave Elena medication to suppress her gag reflex, and slowly, carefully, withdrew the ventilator tube from her throat. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Elena lay motionless, the tube removed, no machine breathing for her. Then her chest rose. Fell. Rose again. She was breathing, on her own, without help. Adrian's knees almost buckled with relief. "Good," Dr. Chen murmured, watching the monitors. "Very good. Oxygen saturation is holding at 94%. Respiratory rate is slightly elevated, but within acceptable range." They placed a simple oxygen cannula in Elena's nose, adjusted her position slightly, and stepped back to observe. Elena continued breathing, her body remembering what to do even if her mind remained somewhere far away. "Now we wait," Dr. Chen said, turning to Adrian. "The sedation will wear off over the next few hours. When she wakes, if she wakes today, she may be confused, agitated, possibly in pain. That's all normal." "Can I talk to her now?" Adrian asked. "Of course. In fact, please do." Adrian returned to his chair, reclaiming Elena's hand, studying her face for any change. Her lips were dry and cracked from the ventilator tube. Her skin remained too pale. But she was breathing, fighting, still here. "You did it," Adrian said softly. "You're breathing on your own. The doctors are impressed, though they're trying not to show it. I'm not surprised. You've always been stronger than anyone gave you credit for." He settled into his vigil again, talking to fill the silence, to give Elena's unconscious mind something to follow back to the surface. "Sophia drew you another picture yesterday," Adrian continued. "Vittoria brought it by. It's a garden with flowers that are taller than the house and a sun that takes up half the page. She said it's for you, to make you feel better. She's convinced that if she draws it bright enough, happy enough, you'll wake up and come home." Adrian's voice caught. Marcus has stopped eating again. He had 3 bites of toast this morning and pushed everything else away. Vittoria's worried, but I told her he's always been like that when he's scared. You're the only one who can get him to eat when he's upset. You make it into a game, turn the spoon into an airplane or something. I don't know how to do that. The afternoon stretched into evening. Adrian continued talking, sharing memories, confessing failures, making promises he hoped he'd have the chance to keep. The light through the window turned golden, then amber, then faded to the blue-gray of dusk. Around 7 p.m., Elena's eyelids twitched. Adrian stopped mid-sentence, his entire body going still. "Elena?" Another twitch. Then her fingers moved against his palm, just the faintest flutter, but movement. Deliberate movement. "Elena, can you hear me?" Adrian leaned closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. "Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." For a long moment, nothing. Then Elena's fingers tightened around his, weak, trembling, but unmistakable. Adrian's vision blurred with tears. "That's it. That's perfect. You're doing so good, baby. Can you open your eyes?" Elena's face scrunched slightly, like she was trying to remember how eyes worked. Her lids fluttered, showing slivers of brown, then closed again. "Take your time," Adrian said, even though every cell in his body was screaming for her to wake up fully, to look at him, to come back completely. "There's no rush. I'm right here." It took another 10 minutes. Elena's breathing changed, becoming faster, shallower. Her fingers moved restlessly in Adrian's grip. Small sounds emerged from her throat, confused, pained animal noises that made Adrian's chest constrict. "You're okay," he said quickly. "You're in the hospital. You're safe. I'm here with you." Elena's eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, pupils blown wide, darting around the room without recognition. Then they landed on Adrian's face and stopped. Confusion flickered across her expression, followed by something that might have been fear. "Hey," Adrian said softly, his hand still cupping her face. "Hey, it's okay. You're okay." Elena's mouth moved. No sound came out, just a dry rasp. Her hand went to her throat, touching the oxygen cannula with weak, uncoordinated fingers. "Don't pull that out," Adrian said gently, catching her hand. "It's helping you breathe. You've been really sick, Elena. Do you remember what happened?" Her brow furrowed. She tried to speak again, managed a whisper so faint Adrian had to lean close to hear it. "Wine." The single word landed like a gunshot. Adrian's throat tightened. "Yeah, the wine. You drank it instead of me." Elena's eyes filled with tears that spilled over, tracking down her temples. She tried to turn her head away, but didn't have the strength. "Why?" Adrian asked, the question he'd been carrying for 3 days finally breaking free. "Elena, why did you drink it? You could have warned me. You could have knocked the glass away. Why did you choose poison over talking to me?" Elena's lips trembled. When she spoke again, each word clearly cost her. "You wouldn't have heard me." The 5 words hit Adrian like physical blows. He sat back, Elena's hand still in his, staring at the woman he'd married 7 years ago. The woman he'd slowly, thoughtlessly erased from his awareness until she'd been forced to prove her existence by dying. "You're right," Adrian said, his voice breaking. "You're absolutely right. I wouldn't have listened. I would have drunk it anyway, probably annoyed that you'd interrupted, and I would have died never knowing what I'd lost." Elena was crying harder now, silent tears that shook her whole body. Adrian wanted to pull her into his arms, to hold her the way he should have been holding her for years. But she looked so fragile, hooked up to monitors, that he was afraid he'd break her further. "I should call the doctor," Adrian said, reaching for the call button. "Let them know you're awake." Elena's grip on his hand tightened with surprising strength. "No." Her voice was barely there, scraped raw from the ventilator tube. "Not yet." Adrian froze. I need to say this." Elena's eyes locked on his, and Adrian saw something in them that made his blood run cold. Not anger, not fear. Something worse. Resignation. "I've been invisible for 6 years," Elena whispered, each word an effort. "Every birthday you forgot. Every night I cried alone. Every time I tried to tell you I was drowning and you just nodded and went back to your phone." "Elena, let me finish." Her voice gained fractional strength. I tried so hard to matter to you, to be worth your attention. But you looked right through me, like I was furniture. Like I only existed to manage your house and raise your children and show up to dinners where you couldn't be bothered to even see me." Adrian felt each accusation like a blade. "You're right. About all of it. I know I'm right." Elena's tears continued falling. "Do you know what it's like? Being married to someone who acts like you're not even there? Who treats a shipping manifest like it matters more than your existence? I'm sorry, Adrian said helplessly. I'm so fucking sorry, Elena. I don't have excuses, I don't want apologies. Elena's breathing was labored now, her oxygen saturation dipping on the monitor. I want to know why. Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? Nothing. Adrian moved closer, desperate for her to understand. You did nothing wrong. This is all me. My failure, my blindness, Then why? Elena's voice cracked completely. Why did you stop seeing me? Adrian looked at his wife, really looked at her, and felt the weight of 6 years of negligence crash down on his shoulders. He could give her easy answers, comfortable lies, blame the business, the pressure, his father's legacy. Or he could tell her the truth. Because you made me feel, Adrian said quietly. And I didn't know how to handle that. Elena blinked, confusion cutting through her pain. Adrian continued, the words coming from some deep, locked place he'd never let anyone access. You know what my father taught me? That emotion is weakness, that caring too much about anything makes you vulnerable, that the moment you love something, you give your enemies ammunition. He looked down at their joined hands. When we got married, I loved you so much it terrified me. You made me happy in a way I didn't know was possible. Made me want things beyond power and territory. Made me imagine a life that wasn't just violence and strategy and constant vigilance. Adrian's voice dropped, and that scared the hell out of me. Elena was listening now, her tears still falling, but her expression shifting. So I did what I was trained to do, Adrian continued. I compartmentalized. I put you in a box labeled safe and tried to protect you by keeping distance, by not letting myself need you too much, by convincing myself that the best thing I could do for you was stay focused on the business, make us secure, build enough power that no one could hurt us. But you hurt us, Elena whispered. You hurt me. I know. Adrian's own tears started then, hot and unbidden. I thought distance would keep you safe from the darkness in my world. Instead, it just made you disappear. And I let it happen because watching you fade was less terrifying than facing how much I needed you. Elena closed her eyes, fresh tears squeezing out. I needed you too. Every day. Every moment. And you were never there. I'm here now, Adrian said desperately. I know that's not enough. I know 3 days at your bedside doesn't erase 6 years of absence. But Elena, I'm here. And if you give me a chance, just one chance, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I see you, that you matter, that you're the most important thing in my world. I can't. Elena's voice was barely audible. I can't go back to being invisible. The words shattered something in Adrian's chest. You won't be. I swear to you. You swore before. Elena opened her eyes, and the look in them was devastating. On our wedding day. You promised I'd be your partner, your equal, that I'd never be just another mob wife locked in a gilded cage. And then you put me in one anyway. I was wrong, Adrian said. I was so wrong, Elena. But I'm not asking you to trust my promises. I'm asking you to trust my actions. Let me show you. Let me prove it. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her breathing ragged, her face pale and drawn. Finally, she spoke. Do you know what I was writing? In the guest room you turned into an office? Adrian shook his head, ashamed that he didn't know. My exit plan, Elena said softly. I was documenting everything. Every forgotten anniversary, every missed dinner, every time you chose work over our children, building a case for why I needed to leave you. The revelation hit Adrian like a freight train. Elena, I was going to take the twins and go, she continued, her voice gaining terrible clarity, to my sisters in Philadelphia. I had it all planned out. I was just waiting for Marcus's 5th birthday, because I didn't want him to remember his birthday as the day his parents' marriage ended. Adrian felt the floor drop out from under him. You were leaving. I am leaving, Elena corrected. Or I was. Before the wine. Before this. She gestured weakly at the hospital room. Now, I don't know what I'm doing. Don't leave, Adrian said, the words torn from somewhere primal. Please, Elena, don't take my children and don't leave. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, I'll step back from the business, whatever you need. I need you to tell me why I should stay, Elena interrupted. Not promises about what you'll do differently. Tell me why I should give you another chance when you've had 6 years of chances and wasted every single one." Adrian looked at his wife, at the woman who'd drunk poison because she'd believed he wouldn't hear her warning, and knew that whatever he said next would determine the rest of his life. "You shouldn't," he said finally. Elena's eyes widened. "I'm not saying that to be dramatic," Adrian continued. "I'm saying it because it's true. You shouldn't give me another chance. I don't deserve it. I've earned exactly what you were planning. You leaving, taking our children, starting over somewhere I can't hurt you anymore." He took a shaky breath. "But I'm asking anyway. Not because I deserve it, but because I finally understand what I've been too blind to see. You're not just my wife. You're not just the mother of my children. You're the only person who's ever made me want to be better than what I was raised to be. And losing you, actually losing you, not just having you exist in the same house like a ghost, would destroy me in ways that no rival family ever could." Elena's tears were flowing freely now, her chest hitching with suppressed sobs. "I'm asking you to stay because our children need their mother," Adrian said. "Because Sophia won't let anyone else braid her hair, and Marcus won't eat for anyone but you, and they both drew you pictures that are hanging on every wall of Vittoria's house. I'm asking you to stay because 3 days of sitting in this room, watching you fight your way back from death, has taught me more about what matters than 34 years of living. I'm asking you to stay because I love you, Elena. I've always loved you. I just forgot how to show it." He leaned forward, his forehead nearly touching hers. "But most of all, I'm asking you to stay because 18 inches shouldn't be an impossible distance to cross. And if you give me a chance, I'll prove that I can reach across it every single day for the rest of our lives." The room fell silent except for the beeping monitors and Elena's labored breathing. Adrian waited, his heart hammering, for her response. When Elena finally spoke, her voice was small and broken and honest. "I don't know if I can trust you again." "I know," Adrian said. "I don't know if I have the strength to rebuild something you broke so thoroughly. I know. I don't know if love is enough when everything else is damaged. I know." Adrian's tears fell onto their joined hands. "But I'm asking you to try anyway. We'll go as slow as you need. We'll get help. Therapists, counselors, whatever it takes. I'll prove to you every day that I see you, that you matter, that you're worth fighting for." Elena closed her eyes, exhausted beyond measure. "I'm so tired, Adrian." "Then rest." Adrian brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I'll be right here when you wake up. I'm not going anywhere." "You said that before," Elena whispered. "I mean it this time." "That's what scares me," Elena said. "What if you do mean it, and I let myself believe it, and then you forget again? What if I'm not strong enough to survive being invisible twice?" Adrian had no answer for that, no guarantee he could offer that wouldn't sound hollow after 6 years of broken promises. So instead, he did the only thing he could think of. He pressed the call button for the nurse. "What are you doing?" Elena asked weakly. "Calling the doctor," Adrian said. "You need to rest, and you need medical attention, and I need to step out of this room." Elena's eyes flew open, panic flashing across her face. "You're leaving?" "For 30 minutes, Adrian said firmly. "I'm going to the cafeteria. I'm going to eat an actual meal. Then I'm going to the bathroom in the hallway where I can actually shower and change clothes. And then I'm coming back." "I don't understand." Adrian cupped her face gently. "You said you can't trust my promises. So I'm going to start showing you my actions instead. Starting with taking care of myself so I can take care of you properly. Starting with proving that when I say I'll be back, I mean it." Dr. Chen arrived, took one look at Elena's tear-stained face and elevated vital signs, and immediately shifted into doctor mode. "Mrs. Moretti, you're awake. That's wonderful. How are you feeling?" "Like I was poisoned," Elena rasped. Dr. Chen's mouth twitched. "That would be accurate, mister. Moretti, I need to examine my patient. Perhaps you could—" "I'm stepping out for 30 minutes, Adrian said, his eyes still on Elena. "I'll be back." He stood, pressed one more kiss to Elena's forehead, and forced himself to walk out of the room. It was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. In the hallway, Adrian leaned against the wall and let himself shake. Elena was awake. She was talking. She was angry and hurt and honest, and every word she'd spoken had been deserved. She was also right. Promises meant nothing after 6 years of broken ones. If he wanted his wife back, If he wanted his family back, he was going to have to earn it. One action at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. Adrian pushed off the wall and headed for the cafeteria. He had 29 minutes before he needed to be back in Elena's room. He intended to be there in 25. Adrian returned to Elena's room in exactly 24 minutes, showered and changed, carrying a sandwich he'd forced himself to eat in the cafeteria. Elena was asleep again, her body surrendering to the exhaustion of waking, of confronting him, of saying aloud all the things she'd been carrying alone for 6 years. Dr. Chen stood at the foot of the bed, reviewing charts on her tablet. She looked up when Adrian entered, her expression carefully neutral. "How is she?" Adrian asked quietly, not wanting to wake Elena. "Stable, tired, angry, which is actually a good sign." Dr. Chen gestured for Adrian to follow her into the hallway. Once the door closed behind them, she continued. "Mr. Moretti, I need to be direct with you about something." Adrian's stomach clenched. "What's wrong?" "Nothing medically, not yet. But your wife just survived a traumatic poisoning. Her heart is damaged, her body is weakened. And from what I observed, her emotional state is extremely fragile." Dr. Chen's eyes were sharp. "The next few weeks are going to be critical, and I'm not just talking about her physical recovery." "I understand." "I don't think you do." Dr. Chen's tone was professional but firm. "Elena told me she was planning to leave you. Before all this happened, she was documenting reasons to end your marriage. That doesn't just disappear because she nearly died." Adrian felt the words like a punch. "She told you that?" "She's my patient. We talk." Dr. Chen crossed her arms. "I'm telling you this because you need to understand what you're asking of her. You want her to trust you again, to give you another chance. But trust isn't rebuilt with grand gestures or promises. It's rebuilt with consistent daily choices to show up and do the work." "I know that." "Do you?" Dr. Chen challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, you're a man who's had a wake-up call. And wake-up calls have a shelf life. 3 months from now, when the fear fades and business demands your attention, will you still be choosing your wife? Or will you slip back into old patterns?" Adrian met the doctor's gaze steadily. "I won't." "That's what they all say." Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. "I've seen this before, Mr. Moretti. Crisis brings clarity. Couples reunite at hospital bedsides, swear to change everything, mean it genuinely in the moment. Then life returns to normal, and the same dynamics that broke them in the first place come creeping back. Then what do you suggest I do?" "Get help. Professional help. Not just couples therapy, though you'll need that too. Individual therapy, for both of you. Elena needs support processing what happened. The poisoning, the near-death experience, the years of emotional neglect. And you need to figure out why you turned your wife into a ghost before you can promise you won't do it again." Doctor. Chen pulled a business card from her pocket and handed it to Adrian. "Dr. Sarah Reeves, she specializes in trauma and relationship repair. I've already spoken to Elena about seeing her. Now I'm telling you the same thing." Adrian looked at the card, at the neat print proclaiming expertise in individual and couples counseling. A week ago, he would have dismissed this out of hand. Adrian Moretti didn't need therapy. He'd been raised to handle his own problems, to view vulnerability as weakness. But a week ago, his wife had been planning to leave him, and he'd been too blind to notice. "I'll call her," Adrian said, pocketing the card. "Good." Dr. Chen turned to head back down the hallway, then paused. "One more thing. Elena asked me about the twins. She wants to see them." Adrian's chest tightened. "When?" "Tomorrow, if her vitals remain stable. But, Mr. Moretti, you need to prepare them. They're 4 years old. They're going to be scared seeing their mother in a hospital bed, weak and hooked up to monitors. You need to make sure they understand what to expect." After Dr. Chen left, Adrian stood in the hallway for a long moment, his phone heavy in his pocket. He should call Vittoria, tell her about Elena waking up, start making arrangements for the twins to visit. Instead, he found himself dialing the number on Dr. Reeves's card. A receptionist answered on the second ring. "Dr. Reeves' office." "My name is Adrian Moretti. Dr. Chen from Northwestern Memorial referred me. I need to schedule an appointment as soon as possible." There was a pause, the sound of keyboard clicks. "Dr. Reeves has an opening tomorrow at 2 p.m. Would that work?" Tomorrow. Adrian thought about his calendar, the meetings that would need to be rescheduled, the business that would have to wait. A week ago, he would have asked for a later slot, something that wouldn't interfere with work. "Tomorrow at 2 is perfect," Adrian said. He ended the call and immediately dialed Vittoria. His mother answered on the first ring, her voice tight with barely contained anxiety. "How is she?" "Awake, talking, angry." Adrian leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "The doctors think she can see the twins tomorrow." Vittoria's exhale was audible. "Thank the stars. The children have been asking constantly." Sofia cried herself to sleep last night because she had a nightmare that Elena had disappeared. The image of his daughter crying made Adrian's chest constrict. How are they really? Scared, confused, acting out in small ways because they don't understand why their mother vanished. Vittoria's voice softened. "Marcus threw his breakfast across the room this morning when I tried to give him something other than the cinnamon toast Elena makes. Sofia won't let anyone touch her hair." "I need you to bring them to the hospital tomorrow afternoon," Adrian said, "around 3. But I need to prepare them first. Is there a way I can video call them tonight? Actually talk to them, not just check a box?" There was a pause, and then Vittoria said quietly, "Of course. I'll have them ready at 7. Thank you." "Adrian?" Vittoria's tone shifted. "You sound different." "I am different." Adrian looked through the window of Elena's room at his wife sleeping in the hospital bed. "I have to be." He ended the call and returned to Elena's side, settling into the chair that had become more familiar than his own bed. She was deeply asleep now, her breathing even, her face relaxed in a way it hadn't been while awake. Without the tension of consciousness, she looked younger, more like the woman he'd married 7 years ago. Adrian pulled out his phone and opened the Notes app, staring at the blank screen. Dr. Chen had said change required consistent daily choices, so he needed to start making a record, holding himself accountable. He began typing. Day 1. Elena is awake. She's hurt, angry, honest about planning to leave me. She's right to feel all of it. Tomorrow I see a therapist at 2 p.m. Tomorrow the twins visit at 3 p.m. Today I kept my promise to return in 30 minutes. Small steps. Adrian saved the note and pocketed his phone. Then he did something he hadn't done in longer than he could remember. He sat in the silence, not checking email, not reviewing reports, not planning his next move, just sat with his wife, present and aware, counting her breaths and thanking whatever power existed that she was still breathing at all. Hours passed. Evening nurses came and went. A dinner tray arrived that Elena was too deeply asleep to eat. Adrian picked at the food himself, forcing nutrition into a body that wanted to run on adrenaline and fear. Around 9 p.m., his phone buzzed. A text from Vittoria with a photo attached. Sofia and Marcus, freshly bathed and in pajamas, holding up drawings they'd made for their mother. Sofia's was another explosion of flowers and sunshine. Marcus's was harder to decipher but appeared to be their family holding hands, all 4 figures connected in a chain across the page. "The twins ready for your call," Vittoria's text read. "Whenever you are." Adrian looked at Elena, still sleeping, then back at the photo of his children. He should wait. Do this somewhere Elena couldn't overhear. But something made him stay in the room, made him want her to witness this, even if she was unconscious. He initiated the video call. 2 small faces filled his screen immediately, pressing so close to the camera that Adrian could see nothing but enormous eyes and excited expressions. "Daddy!" Sofia's voice was loud enough that Adrian instinctively checked to make sure Elena hadn't stirred. "Nona said we could talk to you." "Hi, baby." Adrian smiled despite his exhaustion. "Can you back up a little? I can't see you properly." Both children shuffled backward until their full faces were visible. Marcus was clutching Mr. Buttons, the stuffed rabbit, with the kind of death grip that suggested the toy hadn't left his hands in days. "How are you guys doing?" Adrian asked. "When is Mommy coming home?" Marcus asked immediately, his lower lip trembling. "You said soon. It's been lots of days." "I know, buddy. But I have really good news. Mommy woke up today." Both children gasped. Sofia's hands flew to her mouth. "She did? She's awake? Can we talk to her?" "Not right now. She's sleeping again because waking up made her really tired. But tomorrow Nona is going to bring you to the hospital, and you'll get to see Mommy yourselves." Will she be better? Sophia asked. Will she come home with us? Adrian chose his words carefully. Mommy is getting better, but it's going to take time. She was very sick, and even though she's awake now, she still needs to rest and let the doctors help her. Because of the bad medicine? Marcus asked, his voice small. Adrian's breath caught. What do you know about bad medicine? Nona said Mommy took bad medicine by accident and it made her sick. Marcus hugged Mr. Buttons tighter. Like when I ate the plant that time and threw up. The memory surfaced. 6 months ago, Marcus had eaten part of a houseplant and gotten violently ill. Elena had handled the entire crisis. The panicked call to poison control, the trip to the emergency room, the night sitting up with their son to make sure he was okay. Adrian had been in Milwaukee, negotiating a warehouse lease, and hadn't even known it had happened until 2 days later. Sort of like that, Adrian said carefully, but Mommy is strong, and she's fighting really hard to get better so she can come home to you. Will you come home too? Sophia asked. Her directness was devastating. What do you mean, sweetheart? You're never home, Sophia said simply, with the brutal honesty of a 4-year-old. You live at work. Will you live at home with us when Mommy comes back? Adrian felt Elena's earlier words echo in his mind. Marcus asked me yesterday why I don't live with them anymore. His children didn't think he lived with them, because in every way that mattered, he didn't. Yes, Adrian said firmly. I'm going to be home, a lot more than I used to be. I'm going to have breakfast with you and help you get ready for school and read you bedtime stories. Really? Marcus's eyes were wide. Really? I promise. You promised to come to my dance show, Sophia said quietly. But you didn't come. The accusation hit Adrian like a sledgehammer. He didn't even remember what dance show she was talking about. How many had he missed? You're right, Adrian said, forcing himself to meet his daughter's eyes through the screen. I broke that promise. And I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm really, really sorry. I can't change missing your show, but I can promise that I'm going to be at all your shows from now on. And this time, I'm going to keep that promise. How do we know? Sophia asked, her small face serious. Because I'm going to prove it to you, every day. Starting tomorrow when you come visit Mommy, and I'll be right there with her. And then when we all go home, I'll be there for breakfast, and dinner, and bedtime. Adrian's voice thickened. I know you don't have any reason to believe me right now, but I'm going to show you, okay? Sophia studied him with an intensity that reminded Adrian painfully of Elena. Then she nodded slowly. Okay. Can you tell Mommy I miss her? Marcus asked, his eyes filling with tears. Can you tell her I've been really good and I ate almost all my toast today and I want her to come home? I'll tell her, Adrian promised. She's going to be so proud of you for being brave. After the call ended, Adrian sat in the dim room and let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done to his family. Not just to Elena, but to Sophia and Marcus. 2 children who'd learned not to count on their father, who'd adapted to his absence so completely that his presence had become remarkable. He pulled out his phone and added to his notes. The twins don't think I live with them. Sophia remembers every promise I've broken. Marcus is 4 years old and has already learned not to expect me to show up. I did this. I taught my children that their father doesn't exist for them. That stops now. You're going to have to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. Adrian's head snapped up. Elena was awake, her eyes open and focused on him. He had no idea how long she'd been conscious, how much she'd heard. How long have you been awake? Adrian asked. Long enough? Elena's voice was stronger than earlier, though still rough. Long enough to hear you promise our children you'll change? Long enough to wonder if you mean it this time. Adrian set his phone aside and moved closer to her bed. I mean it. You sounded convincing on that call, Elena said. But you sound convincing every time. You're good at saying what people want to hear. It's one of the things that makes you dangerous in business. This isn't business. No, it's harder than business. Elena shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. Business has clear rules. You make deals, you honor them, or you don't, and everyone knows where they stand. Family is messier. You can break promises to family 100 times and they'll keep giving you chances because they love you. Until they stop, Adrian said quietly. Until they stop, Elena agreed. I stopped, Adrian. Months ago. Maybe longer. I stopped expecting you to show up, Stopped hoping you'd notice me. Stopped believing that the man I married was still in there somewhere under all the armor. He is, Adrian said desperately. Elena, he's still here. I know I've buried him under work and distance and fear, but he's still here. Elena's eyes were sad. Maybe. But even if that's true, I don't know if I have the energy to excavate him. I'm so tired, Adrian. Not just from the poison, from years of carrying our marriage by myself, from being the only parent our children can count on, from disappearing slowly while you watched and did nothing. Then let me carry it, Adrian said. Let me do the work. You don't have to excavate anything or carry anything. Just rest, heal, and let me prove I can be the partner you needed me to be all along. For how long? Elena's voice was almost gentle. How long until the crisis fades and business calls and you forget again? How long until I'm invisible again? Adrian had no answer that wouldn't sound like another empty promise. So instead, he pulled out his phone and showed Elena his notes. I'm keeping a record, he said. Every day, every choice, every promise kept or broken. Dr. Chen gave me a therapist's number. I called her. I have an appointment tomorrow at 2, and I'm going to keep going every week for however long it takes to figure out why I did this to us and how to make sure I never do it again. Elena read the notes, her expression unreadable. Therapy? Individual therapy and couples therapy, if you're willing. I know it doesn't fix 6 years of damage, but it's a start. You hate therapists, Elena said. You told me once that paying someone to listen to your problems was for weak people. Adrian flinched at the memory of his own arrogance. I was wrong about a lot of things. Elena handed the phone back to him. I want to believe you. I want to believe this is real, that you've actually changed, that it's not just fear talking. But belief isn't enough anymore. Elena's voice broke slightly. I need proof. I need to see you choose me. Choose us. Choose our family over and over again until it becomes as natural as breathing. And I don't know if you're capable of that. I am, Adrian said. I know you have no reason to trust that, but I am. Watch me, Elena, for however long you need. Watch me show up, do the work, be present. And if I fail, if I slip back into old patterns, call me on it. Hold me accountable. Don't let me get away with being absent ever again. That's not my job, Elena said tiredly. I shouldn't have to police your attention. You should want to be present because we matter to you, not because I'm forcing you. You're right. Adrian reached for her hand, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. You're absolutely right. I'm just saying that if you see me failing, tell me. Because I've been blind for so long, I might not recognize it myself at first. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for something. Truth, maybe. Or hope. Finally, she spoke. The twins are coming tomorrow. At 3. Vittoria's bringing them. I told them you were awake, that you were getting better. What else did you tell them? That I was going to be home more. That I'd be at breakfast and dinner and bedtime. That I'd keep my promises this time. Adrian paused. Sophia reminded me I missed her dance show. I don't even remember which one. That's how absent I've been. I can't even remember missing it. It was 3 months ago, Elena said softly. She was a butterfly. She practiced her routine every day for weeks, was so excited for you to see it. She kept asking me when you'd get there. I kept making excuses until the show was over. The image of his daughter as a butterfly, waiting for a father who never showed, made Adrian's chest physically hurt. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing, Elena said, an edge of frustration in her voice. Apologies are words. I need actions. Then that's what I'll give you. Adrian stood, sudden determination flooding through him. Starting now. What do you need? What? Right now, in this moment, what do you need? Are you thirsty? Hungry? In pain? Too hot? Too cold? Tell me what you need, and I'll handle it. Elena stared at him like he'd grown a second head. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're recovering from being poisoned, you're exhausted, and you're stuck in a hospital bed. So tell me what would make this even slightly more bearable, and I'll make it happen. Elena's expression flickered with something that might have been hope, quickly suppressed. I'm cold. The hospital keeps it freezing in here. Adrian was moving before she finished the sentence. He found an extra blanket in the wardrobe, warmed it slightly against the radiator, then draped it carefully over Elena, tucking it around her shoulders. Better? Yes. Elena said, surprise evident in her voice. What else? I don't... What else? Adrian repeated. Don't think about whether you deserve to ask or whether it's too much trouble. Just tell me. Elena bit her lip. My hair feels disgusting. 3 days in a hospital bed, I probably look like I've been dragged through a hedge. You look beautiful, Adrian said automatically, then caught himself. But if you want your hair washed, I'll figure out how to do it without getting your IVs wet. You don't know how to wash someone's hair in a hospital bed. Then I'll ask a nurse to teach me. Adrian was already heading for the door. Don't go anywhere. He returned 10 minutes later with a nurse, a basin of warm water, towels, and hospital-grade shampoo. The nurse showed him how to position Elena's head, how to protect the IV sites, how to work the shampoo through without causing pain. I can do this, the nurse offered. It's really not necessary for you to... I want to learn, Adrian said firmly. Show me. So the nurse demonstrated, and Adrian followed her instructions with careful attention, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he worked shampoo through Elena's dark hair. Elena's eyes closed, her breathing evening out, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. You're good at this, the nurse said approvingly. Most family members are too nervous to try. After the nurse left, Adrian dried Elena's hair with towel-dried care, then found a comb and worked through the tangles with patience he hadn't known he possessed. Elena sat very still through the entire process, her eyes closed, tears leaking from the corners. Did I hurt you? Adrian asked immediately. No. Elena's voice was thick. It's just been so long since you touched me like this. Like you cared. Like I was worth the effort. Adrian's hand stilled in her hair. You've always been worth the effort. I just forgot how to show it. He finished combing her hair, then helped her settle back against the pillows. Elena looked better now, more like herself, though still pale and weak. Thank you, she whispered. You don't have to thank me for basic care, Elena. But I do. Because it's not basic for us. For 6 years, basic care has been me taking care of everyone else while you took care of business. Elena's eyes opened, meeting his. This feels strange. You, taking care of me. I don't know how to process it. Then don't process it yet. Just accept it. Adrian sat back down in his chair, reclaiming her hand. One moment at a time, one small action at a time. Until someday maybe this feels normal instead of strange. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I made an appointment with Dr. Reeves too, for next week, when I'm out of the hospital. Hope bloomed in Adrian's chest. You did? Doctor. Chen recommended her strongly, said she specializes in trauma and relationship repair. Elena's smile was wan. Apparently we qualify for both. We do, Adrian agreed. Will you do couple sessions with me, or just individual? I don't know yet. Elena's honesty was brutal but appreciated. Let me get through a few individual sessions first. Figure out what I actually want before I start negotiating what we want together. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable, but not easy either. The space between them was filled with 6 years of damage, with poison and near death and devastating honesty. But there was also something new, fragile, and uncertain, but present. The possibility of repair. The thread of hope that 18 inches didn't have to be an impossible distance. Tell me about therapy tomorrow, Elena said eventually. What are you going to talk about? Adrian considered the question. The truth, I guess. About growing up in this life, learning that emotion was weakness, watching my father prioritize power over everything, including my mother. About meeting you and being terrified of how much I loved you. About building walls to protect us both and ending up just locking you out. That's a lot for one session. Then I'll do more sessions. Adrian met her eyes. However many it takes. Elena studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'll watch. I'll see if you follow through. I'll give you a chance to prove that this is real. Elena's voice was firm, despite her exhaustion. But Adrian, understand this. I'm not promising to stay. I'm not promising to forgive you or trust you or rebuild our marriage. I'm just promising to watch and see what you do next. That's all I can offer right now. It wasn't everything, but it was something, more than Adrian deserved and enough to build on. I'll take it, Adrian said, and I won't waste it. Elena's eyes were already drifting closed, exhaustion claiming her again. You better not. Adrian sat with her as she fell asleep, his hand still holding hers, and added one more note to his phone. Day 1, continued. Washed Elena's hair, helped her feel cared for instead of managed. She's giving me a chance to prove this is real, not forgiveness, not trust. Just a chance to show up consistently and do the work. It's more than I deserve. I won't waste it. Outside the hospital windows, Chicago's lights glittered against the night sky, indifferent to one man's determination to become better than he'd been. But inside room 5342, Adrian Moretti sat vigil over his sleeping wife and made promises not to her, but to himself. He would show up. He would do the work. He would prove that power could be redefined, that strength could include vulnerability, that the most important territory to protect wasn't measured in shipping lanes or profit margins. It was measured in 18 inches of white hospital blanket, in 2 small children who deserved a present father, in one woman who'd refused to disappear even when dying. And Adrian Moretti, who'd almost lost everything that mattered by forgetting to look at what was right in front of him, would spend the rest of his life making sure he never looked away again. Adrian's first therapy session with Dr. Sarah Reeves took place in an office that smelled faintly of lavender and felt nothing like the sterile conference rooms where he usually conducted business. The furniture was soft, the lighting warm, and the woman sitting across from him had kind eyes that suggested she'd heard every confession humanity had to offer and still believed in redemption. Tell me why you're here, Dr. Reeves said, her pen poised over a notepad. Adrian had prepared for this question, had rehearsed various versions on the drive over, but sitting in the actual moment, all his planned answers felt inadequate. My wife almost died because I stopped seeing her, he said finally, and I need to understand why I let that happen so I can make sure I never do it again. Dr. Reeves tilted her head slightly. Tell me about stopped seeing her. So Adrian did. He talked about the 18 inches at the dinner table, about forgotten birthdays and missed recitals, about a woman who'd faded from his awareness while living in the same house. He talked about the wine, the poison, Elena's devastating choice to drink it herself because she'd believed warning him would be useless. She was right, Adrian said, his voice rough. If she'd told me there was poison in that glass, I would have ignored her. I would have drunk it anyway, probably annoyed at the interruption. That's how completely I'd stopped listening. Dr. Reeves was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. What do you think would have happened if Elena had died instead of you? The question hit Adrian like a physical blow. I've never thought about it that way. Think about it now. Adrian forced himself to imagine it. Elena gone, not just absent but erased from the world. Sophia and Marcus crying at a funeral, asking why Mommy wouldn't wake up. The house feeling even emptier than it already did. Years stretching ahead without her voice, her presence, her stubborn refusal to disappear completely, no matter how invisible he'd made her. I think I would have finally seen her, Adrian said quietly. When it was too late to matter. I think I would have spent the rest of my life understanding exactly what I'd lost, and never getting the chance to fix it. And that terrifies you. Yes. The admission came easier than Adrian expected. It terrifies me because I came so close. Another few seconds, and that would have been my reality. Elena dead, the twins motherless, and me finally awake but too late. Dr. Reeves made a note. You mentioned that Elena was planning to leave you, before the poisoning. Did you know? No, I didn't even suspect. The shame of that ignorance still burned. She was documenting everything in the guest room, building a case for divorce. And I had no idea because I never paid enough attention to notice what my own wife was doing. How does that make you feel? Adrian wanted to deflect, to intellectualize, to turn the question into something he could analyze rather than feel. But that was the old pattern, the armor he'd worn for so long it had fused to his skin. Like a failure, he said instead. Like I took the most precious thing in my life and treated it like furniture until it broke. Like I deserved to lose everything because I didn't value it when I had it. Do you think you deserve to lose your family? Yes. The word came out flat, certain. But I'm going to fight like hell to keep them anyway. Dr. Reeves leaned forward slightly. Tell me about your father. The session lasted an hour, though it felt like minutes. Adrian talked about Antonio Moretti, about growing up watching his father choose power over presence, about learning that emotion was weakness and distance was protection. He talked about his mother, about Vittoria's quiet strength, and the way she'd adapted to being second priority in her own marriage. You learned that neglect was normal, Dr. Reeves said, that a successful marriage meant the woman adapted to the man's absence rather than the man being present. Yes, Adrian felt something crack open in his chest. And I'm doing the same thing to Elena that my father did to my mother. I'm repeating the exact pattern I grew up watching. Recognizing the pattern is the first step. Breaking it is harder. Dr. Reeves set down her pen. Adrian, I'm going to be direct with you. The work we're about to do together is going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to examine beliefs you've held your entire life, confront fears you've been running from, and learn to be vulnerable in ways that will feel excruciating at first. I understand. I'm not sure you do. This isn't like business, where you can strategize your way to success. This is emotional archaeology. We're going to dig through layers of learned behavior, family trauma, and self-protective mechanisms you've built since childhood. And the only way through is through. No shortcuts, no bypassing the hard parts. Adrian met her eyes. I'm ready. We'll see, Dr. Reeves said, not unkindly. Same time next week? When Adrian arrived at the hospital at 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the twins were scheduled to visit, Elena was sitting up in bed wearing a robe Vittoria had brought from home. Her hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and though she was still pale and weak, she looked more like herself than she had since the poisoning. How was therapy? Elena asked, as Adrian settled into his usual chair. Hard. Uncomfortable. Necessary. Adrian pulled out his phone and showed her his updated notes. I'm supposed to journal after each session, process what came up. Elena read the notes, her expression unreadable. You talked about your father, and about learning that neglect was normal, that being a good husband meant providing security, not presence. Adrian paused. Doctor, Reeves said, I'm repeating my parents' marriage pattern. She's right. Your mother adapted, Elena said quietly. She learned to live with Antonio's absence, to find fulfillment in other places. She made peace with being second priority. I know. I can't do that. Elena's voice was firm despite her weakness. I won't adapt to being invisible. I won't make peace with second priority. If that's what marriage to you requires, then I can't stay. I'm not asking you to adapt, Adrian said. I'm asking you to let me change the pattern, to break the cycle instead of repeating it. Before Elena could respond, the door opened. Vittoria entered first, her expression carefully neutral, followed by two small figures who froze at the sight of their mother in the hospital bed. Mommy? Sophia's voice was tiny, uncertain. Elena's face transformed, love and relief washing away the exhaustion. Baby, come here. Sophia didn't move, her eyes wide as she took in the monitors, the IV lines, the oxygen cannula. Marcus pressed against Vittoria's leg, clutching Mr. Button so tightly his knuckles were white. Adrian realized his children were terrified, not just scared, but genuinely frightened of what they were seeing. Their mother, who'd always been strong and capable and present, looked fragile and broken. Hey, Adrian said gently, crouching down to the twins' eye level. Remember what we talked about on the phone? About how Mommy is getting better, but she's still tired? Both children nodded mutely. That's what you're seeing now. Mommy looks different because she's been sick, but she's still Mommy. She still loves you more than anything in the world, and she really, really wants to hug you. Will it hurt her? Marcus asked, his voice wobbling. Not if you're gentle. Can you be gentle? Sophia moved first, approaching the bed with careful steps like she was navigating a minefield. Elena held out her arms, and Sophia climbed up with Adrian's help, curling against her mother's side with desperate relief. I missed you so much, Sophia whispered, her face buried in Elena's shoulder. I missed you too, sweet girl. Elena's voice was thick with tears, every single second. Marcus took longer, watching his sister, assessing the situation with the serious expression he got when trying to be brave. Finally, he moved forward, and Adrian lifted him onto the other side of the bed. Marcus immediately burrowed into Elena's other side, still gripping Mr. Buttons. "You came back," Marcus said, his voice muffled against Elena's robe. "Of course I came back." Elena wrapped her arms around both children, wincing slightly at the pull on her IV but not letting go. "I'll always come back to you, always." Adrian stepped back, giving them space, his throat tight as he watched his family. Vittoria moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his arm and squeezing gently. "This is what matters," Vittoria said quietly. "This moment right here. Remember it when the work gets hard." The twins talked over each other, showing Elena their drawings, telling her about staying with Nonna, asking when she was coming home. Elena answered each question with patience and love, her hands smoothing their hair, her lips pressing kisses to their foreheads. Adrian memorized every detail. The way Sophia's fingers twisted in Elena's robe, the way Marcus periodically checked to make sure his mother was still there, still real, the way Elena's face glowed despite her exhaustion, coming alive in a way she never did when it was just her and Adrian. This was what he'd been missing. Not just Elena, but the whole constellation of love and connection and presence that made a family real rather than just people occupying the same space. "Daddy helped Mommy wash her hair yesterday," Elena said after a while, glancing at Adrian. "He did a really good job." Both children looked at their father with identical expressions of surprise. Sophia recovered first. "You did?" "I did," Adrian confirmed. "A nurse showed me how. It's not as easy as it looks." "Can you braid?" Sophia asked skeptically. "Mommy braids my hair every morning, but when she was gone, nobody knew how to do it right." Adrian's chest constricted at the image of his daughter with tangled hair because no one else knew her mother's technique. "I don't know how to braid, but I can learn." "Really?" Sophia's eyes widened. "Really? In fact, why don't you teach me right now?" Vittoria produced a hairbrush from her bag with the knowing smile of someone who'd anticipated this exact scenario. Adrian settled onto the edge of Elena's bed, and Sophia positioned herself between his knees, her dark hair falling down her back. "Okay, you have to split it into 3 parts," Sophia instructed with the seriousness of a master teaching an apprentice. "And then you cross them over each other, but not too tight or it hurts." Adrian's large hands fumbled with the sections of hair, completely out of his element. He'd negotiated million-dollar deals, had stared down armed rivals, had built an empire from inheritance and ruthlessness. But braiding his daughter's hair reduced him to absolute incompetence. "No, Daddy, that part goes under, not over," Sophia corrected, craning her neck to see what he was doing. "Like this?" Adrian tried again, making an even worse mess. Elena was smiling now, genuinely smiling for the first time since she'd woken up. "You're terrible at this." "I know," Adrian admitted, "but I'm going to get better. Sophia, I'm going to practice every day until I can do your hair as well as Mommy does. Deal?" Sophia considered this seriously. "Every day?" "Every day I'm home for breakfast, which is going to be every day from now on. You promise?" Adrian met his daughter's eyes, saw the hope and doubt warring there, and felt the weight of every broken promise he'd ever made settle on his shoulders. This was the moment. This was where he either kept lying or started being honest. "I promise," he said. "And if I break that promise, you get to call me on it. You get to tell me I'm not keeping my word, and I'll fix it. Okay?" Sophia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but you have to actually get better at braiding. This is bad." Laughter rippled through the room, breaking the tension. Even Marcus giggled, peeking up from Elena's side to watch his father's fumbling attempts. They spent the next hour together, all 5 of them crowded onto and around Elena's hospital bed. The twins showed their mother every drawing they'd made, told her every detail of their days with Nonna. Adrian practiced braiding until he managed something that vaguely resembled what Sophia wanted, though it was lumpy and crooked and absolutely terrible. "That's actually progress," Elena said, studying Adrian's handiwork. "Terrible progress, but progress." Eventually, the twins' energy waned. Marcus was yawning, his eyes heavy, and Sophia had gone quiet in that way that meant she was reaching her limit. Vittoria made gentle noises about getting them home for dinner and baths. "Do you have to go?" Marcus asked Elena, his voice small. "You have to go, baby. Mommy needs to rest so she can get stronger and come home." Elena kissed his forehead. "But I'll see you again tomorrow. Nonna will bring you back, okay?" "Promise?" "Promise." After Vittoria left with the twins, the room felt enormous and empty. Adrian and Elena sat in silence for a while, the ghosts of their children's laughter still echoing off the walls. "Thank you," Elena said finally. "For what?" "For being here. For trying with the braiding even though you were awful at it. For letting Sophia teach you." Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "For showing up. I should have been showing up all along." "Yes, but you're showing up now." Elena shifted carefully, wincing slightly. "That's something." Adrian moved closer, helping her adjust her pillows. "How's your pain? Do you need me to call a nurse?" "It's manageable." "Doctor, Chen says I can probably go home in a few days if my vitals stay stable." Elena paused. "Home? I don't even know what that means anymore." "What do you want it to mean?" Elena was quiet for a long time, her gaze distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear. "I want it to mean a place where I'm seen, where my husband knows what I'm writing in the guest room because he asks about it, where my children's father shows up for breakfast without it being remarkable, where 18 inches at a dinner table is easy to cross because we cross it all the time." "Then that's what we'll build," Adrian said, "however long it takes." "I'm still scared," Elena admitted. "Scared that this is temporary, that the crisis will fade and you'll forget again, that I'll wake up 6 months from now and realize I'm invisible again." Adrian pulled out his phone and opened his notes. "Day 4, he read aloud. "Had first therapy session. Talked about learned patterns, about repeating my father's mistakes. Dr. Reeves says breaking these patterns will be harder than anything I've done." I believe her. Practice braiding Sophia's hair. I'm terrible at it, but Elena smiled for the first time since waking up. "Marcus asked me to promise I'd see them tomorrow. I promised. I'm going to keep that promise." He looked up at Elena. "I'm keeping a record. Every day, every promise, every moment. So if I start slipping, you'll have evidence, and so will I." "What happens in 6 months when the journal gets boring?" Elena asked. "When showing up becomes routine instead of remarkable." "Then I'll know I'm doing it right," Adrian said simply. "Because that's what it should be. Routine. Normal. Not something worth noting because it happens so consistently you'd only notice if I stopped." Elena studied him, her whiskey-colored eyes searching his face. "I want to believe you. I know. But I've wanted to believe you before, and every time I ended up disappointed." "I know that too." Adrian reached for her hand, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. "So don't believe me yet. Just watch. Keep watching. And maybe someday the evidence will be enough." The days that followed developed their own rhythm. Adrian arrived at the hospital every morning at 6, before Elena woke, and stayed until she fell asleep at night. He attended his therapy sessions with Dr. Reeves, sitting through uncomfortable conversations about vulnerability and fear and the toxic masculinity he'd inherited like a family heirloom. He video called the twins every evening, helping with homework over FaceTime, reading bedtime stories through a screen, practicing his terrible braiding technique on a doll Vittoria had provided. Elena had her own sessions with Dr. Reeves, though she didn't share details and Adrian didn't ask. He could see the work in her face afterward, in the way her eyes were red-rimmed but clearer, in the way she held herself differently, like someone reassembling broken pieces and deciding which ones were worth keeping. On day 7, Dr. Chen cleared Elena to go home. "Your heart function has improved to about 60%, the doctor said, reviewing charts. "Not perfect, but stable. You'll need medication, regular monitoring, and absolutely no stress for at least 6 weeks." "No stress?" Elena's laugh was brittle. "Have you met my life?" "I'm serious, Mrs. Moretti. Your heart has been through significant trauma. If you push too hard, too fast, you risk permanent damage." Dr. Chen's expression softened. "Which means you're going to need help, real help, not just someone claiming they'll be there." The pointed look she gave Adrian was impossible to miss. "I'll be there," Adrian said firmly. "Whatever she needs." That afternoon, Adrian drove Elena home for the first time in 8 days. The house looked the same, imposing, immaculate, expensive, but felt different somehow. Maybe because Adrian was seeing it through Elena's eyes now, understanding how a mansion could feel like a prison when the person you married was never actually present. Sophia and Marcus were waiting inside with Vittoria, vibrating with barely contained excitement. The moment Elena walked through the door, both children attached themselves to her legs, babbling over each other about how they'd prepared her room and made welcome home signs and couldn't wait to have her back. Gentle, Vittoria reminded them. Remember, Mommy is still recovering. But Elena was crying happy tears, her hands on her children's heads, soaking in their presence like sunshine. Adrian watched from the doorway, his chest tight with the awareness of how close he'd come to destroying this, to losing it all through sheer negligence. I set up the master bedroom for you, Vittoria said to Elena. Fresh sheets, your favorite pillows, and I had a bell installed on the nightstand so you can call for help if you need anything. A bell? Elena looked puzzled. Because I'm sleeping on the couch in our bedroom, Adrian said quietly. Until you decide if you want me there or in the guest room. Elena's eyes widened slightly. She opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded. Okay. That first night home was awkward and careful. Elena was exhausted from the drive, from the overwhelming emotions of being back, from the simple effort of existing in her body. Adrian helped her upstairs, got her settled in bed, made sure her medications were within reach. I'm right here if you need anything, he said, gesturing to the couch he'd set up near the bedroom window. Just ring the bell. This is weird, Elena said. I know. We've shared this bed for 7 years, and now you're sleeping on a couch 10 feet away. Only until you're ready for me to be closer, Adrian said. Your comfort, your timeline, your decision. Elena was quiet for a moment. The old you would have just assumed you belonged in the bed, would have been annoyed at even having this conversation. The old me almost lost you. Adrian met her eyes. I'm done making assumptions about where I belong in your life. The first week home was a careful dance of new routines. Adrian was at breakfast every morning, as promised, attempting to braid Sophia's hair with increasingly less terrible results. He drove the twins to school, something he'd never done before, and picked them up in the afternoon listening to their chatter about recess and art class and who said what to whom. He worked from home instead of his downtown office, setting up in the dining room where Elena could find him if she needed anything. Business that would have consumed 12-hour days in his old life got compressed into focused bursts while the twins were at school, with everything non-urgent postponed or delegated. Elena watched all of it with the wary attention of someone expecting a trap. Adrian felt her eyes on him when he scrambled eggs for breakfast, when he helped Marcus with his reading homework, when he sat in the living room with Sophia and watched her practice her dance routine for an upcoming recital. You're really coming? Sophia asked for the third time, her face a mixture of hope and doubt that broke Adrian's heart. I'm really coming, Adrian confirmed. It's on Saturday at 2 p.m., right? I have it on my calendar. I'll be in the front row. On day 14, Elena's first individual therapy session after coming home, Adrian took both twins to the park so she could have privacy. They played on the swings, fed ducks at the pond, got ice cream even though it was barely 50 degrees outside. Daddy? Marcus asked as they sat on a bench, sticky with chocolate ice cream. Are you going to stay now? What do you mean, buddy? Stay. At home. With us. Marcus's eyes were serious. Or are you going to go back to work all the time? Adrian set down his own ice cream, giving his son his full attention. I'm staying. I'm always going to be at work sometimes because that's my job. But I'm not going to disappear anymore. I'm going to be home for breakfast and dinner and bedtime. I'm going to come to your school events and play with you and be your dad, not just someone who lives in the same house. Promise? Marcus's voice was small. I promise. And Marcus? If I ever break that promise, if I start disappearing again, I want you to tell me. Okay? You get to call me out if I'm not keeping my word. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay. That evening, Adrian found Elena in the kitchen, attempting to make dinner despite Dr. Chen's orders to rest. What are you doing? Adrian asked, gently taking the knife from her hand. I'm making dinner for my family. What does it look like I'm doing? It looks like you're ignoring doctor's orders. Adrian guided Elena to a chair. Sit. I'll handle dinner. You don't cook. Then I'll learn, or I'll order something. But you're not standing over a stove 2 weeks after being poisoned. Adrian pulled out his phone. What are the kids like? Pizza usually works, Elena said, amusement creeping into her voice. But Marcus won't eat it if there's too much cheese, and Sophia only likes pepperoni if it's cut into small pieces. Adrian made notes in his phone. Too much cheese bad for Marcus. Small pepperoni pieces for Sophia. Got it. What else should I know? Elena rattled off a list. Sophia's friend allergies. Marcus's texture issues with certain vegetables. The twins' bedtime routine. The specific way they like their blankets tucked in. Adrian documented all of it, asking clarifying questions, building a database of information any present parent would already know. This is what you've been managing alone for 6 years, Adrian said quietly. Isn't it? All these details, all these preferences, all the invisible work of actually knowing our children. Yes, Elena's voice was soft. It's exhausting being the only one who knows. Then teach me, all of it, every detail you've been carrying alone. Let me help carry it. That night, after pizza and baths and bedtime stories, after the twins were asleep and Elena had taken her medications and settled in bed, Adrian made his nightly notes. Day 14. Took the twins to the park while Elena had therapy. Marcus asked if I was going to stay this time. The fact that he has to ask breaks my heart. Made dinner, well, ordered pizza. But I documented all the kids' preferences. Elena has been carrying all this information alone for years, starting to understand the weight of invisible labor she's been doing. He was about to put his phone away when it buzzed. A text from Elena, even though she was only 20 feet away in their bedroom. Thank you for today, for giving me space for therapy, for taking care of the kids, for trying. Adrian typed back, thank you for letting me try. A pause. Then another message from Elena. The couch looks uncomfortable. It is, Adrian replied honestly, but I'm fine there. Another long pause. Adrian waited, not wanting to push, giving Elena space to make her own decisions. Finally, her response came through. You can sleep in the bed, on your side. This doesn't mean we're okay. It just means the couch is stupid, and we're both adults. Adrian felt something crack open in his chest. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close to rebuilding what he'd broken. But it was trust, tentative and fragile, that he wouldn't take more than she was offering. Okay, he texted back. Thank you. He moved from the couch to his side of the bed, carefully maintaining distance, hyper-aware of Elena's breathing beside him. They lay in the darkness, 18 inches between them, not touching, but together in a way they hadn't been in years. Adrian? Elena's voice was soft in the dark. Yeah? I'm still angry at you. I know. And I'm still scared you'll stop trying once everything feels normal again. I know that too. But I can see you're trying. Really trying, not just performing. Elena shifted slightly. I don't know what that means yet, but I can see it. Adrian's throat tightened. That's all I'm asking, for you to see the work. The rest will take as long as it takes. They fell asleep like that, together, but separate, rebuilding something that had been broken so thoroughly it required complete reconstruction. The weeks unfolded into a new normal. Adrian attended therapy twice a week, unpacking decades of learned behavior, sitting with uncomfortable truths about masculinity and vulnerability and the violence he'd done through absence. Elena did the same, processing trauma and grief, and the slow work of deciding whether their marriage was worth saving. On day 30, they had their first couples session with Dr. Reeves. Tell me where you both are right now, the therapist said. Not where you hope to be or where you think you should be. Where are you actually? Elena spoke first. I'm watching. Adrian has been showing up every day for a month. He's been present for the kids, kept all his promises, done the individual therapy work. And I can see it's real, not just performance. But I'm still scared. Of what? Dr. Reeves asked. Of relaxing. Of letting my guard down and then getting hurt again when he reverts to old patterns. Elena's voice was steady but honest. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust him again. The words landed hard, but Adrian didn't flinch. That's fair. Dr. Reeves turned to him. Adrian, where are you? I'm learning who I am without armor, Adrian said slowly. For 34 years, I've been Antonio Moretti's son first, a crime lord second, and a person maybe third or fourth if at all. I'm trying to figure out how to be Elena's husband and Sophia and Marcus's father before I'm anything else. How's that working? It's terrifying, Adrian admitted, and the most important thing I've ever done. Dr. Reeves made notes. Elena, you said you might never fully trust Adrian again. What would partial trust look like? Elena considered the question. It would look like believing he'll show up most of the time instead of none of the time, like being able to make plans that include him without having a backup for when he doesn't come through, like not flinching every time his phone rings because I assume work will always win. Adrian, can you live with partial trust instead of full forgiveness? Yes, Adrian said without hesitation, because partial trust is more than I deserve, and it's something I can build on. Full trust might never come back, and I've accepted that. But if Elena can trust me even fractionally more each month, if I can prove over years instead of weeks that I'm different now, that's enough. What if it's not enough for Elena? Dr. Reeves asked. What if she does this work and decides the damage is too extensive to repair? The question hung in the air. Adrian felt Elena's eyes on him, watching for his reaction. Then I'll respect her decision, Adrian said quietly, and I'll still show up for our children every single day. I'll still be present for Sophia's recitals and Marcus's reading time. I'll still split custody in whatever way works best for them, not for me. Because whether or not Elena and I can rebuild our marriage, I'm done being an absent father. Elena's eyes were shining with unshed tears. You mean that? I do. Adrian met her gaze. I'm not doing this work to manipulate you into staying. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, regardless of outcome. You deserve a present co-parent for our children, even if you never want to be married to me again. Something shifted in Elena's expression. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a softening. A recognition that Adrian's changes weren't conditional on her returning to him, weren't just another transaction. Okay, Elena said softly. Okay. On Saturday, day 35, Adrian sat in the front row of Sophia's dance recital, exactly where he'd promised he'd be. The auditorium was packed with parents and grandparents, everyone holding phones to record the moment. Sophia was a sunflower this time, her costume bright yellow, her face painted with petals. She spotted Adrian in the audience, and her entire face lit up with such pure joy that Adrian felt his chest constrict. Elena sat beside him, her hand resting on the armrest between them. Halfway through Sophia's routine, Adrian reached out and took that hand. Elena stiffened for just a moment, then relaxed, her fingers interlacing with his. 18 inches. The distance between their seats, between their hands, between who they'd been and who they were becoming. After the recital, Sophia ran to them, throwing herself into Adrian's arms. You came. You really came. Of course I came, Adrian said, hugging his daughter tightly. I promised, didn't I? You kept your promise. Sophia's smile was brilliant. Did you see my sunflower dance? Was I good? You were perfect, Elena said, stroking Sophia's hair. The best sunflower in the whole show. That night, after the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Adrian and Elena sat in the living room with tea, something they used to do in the early years of their marriage and hadn't done in longer than either could remember. I have something to tell you, Elena said, her hands wrapped around her mug. Adrian's stomach clenched. Okay. I talked to my lawyer this week, the one I'd consulted about divorce. Elena's voice was steady. I told her I was putting everything on hold, not canceling, just pausing. Hope bloomed in Adrian's chest, but he kept his voice neutral. What changed? You did. Elena met his eyes. Consistently, daily, without fanfare or demands for credit. You've been doing the work for over a month now, and it hasn't stopped. You haven't gotten comfortable and slipped back into old patterns. You've kept every promise you made to me and to the kids. I'm going to keep doing it, Adrian said. Not just this month, but next month and the month after that, for as long as it takes for you to decide what you want. I know. Elena's smile was small but genuine. That's why I'm pausing instead of proceeding. I want to see where this goes, where we go, if we're actually capable of rebuilding something real instead of just functional. We are, Adrian said with quiet certainty. It won't be what we had before because that was broken, but we can build something better, something where neither of us disappears. Elena set down her tea and moved closer, closing the 18 inches between them on the couch. She didn't cuddle up to him or initiate anything beyond proximity, but the deliberate choice to be closer was significant. I'm not ready to say we're okay, Elena said softly. I'm not ready to forgive everything or pretend the last 6 years didn't happen. I'm not asking you to. But I'm ready to try. Actually try, not just watch from a distance. I'm ready to do couples therapy and have hard conversations and see if we can build something that doesn't require me to be invisible. Adrian's vision blurred with tears. Thank you for giving me this chance, for not giving up on us even when I gave you every reason to. Don't make me regret it, Elena said, but her tone was soft, almost teasing. I won't. I swear to you, Elena, I won't. 6 months later, on a cold February evening, Adrian and Elena returned to the Aurelius Club for the first time since the poisoning. The same table, the same view of Chicago's glittering skyline, the same sommelier who'd unknowingly served poison and still looked vaguely traumatized by the memory. Are you sure you want to be here? Adrian asked as they were seated. We can go anywhere else. I'm sure. Elena's voice was firm. I'm not letting what happened here control the rest of my life. We're rewriting this memory. The sommelier approached with trembling hands. Mrs. Moretti, Mr. Moretti, it's good to see you both. I want to apologize again for... It wasn't your fault, Elena interrupted gently. You were a pawn in someone else's game. We don't hold you responsible. The man's relief was visible. He poured water for them both, his hand steadier now, and retreated. Adrian looked across the table at his wife. 6 months of therapy, of daily choices, of showing up consistently until it became second nature. 6 months of learning to braid hair and help with homework and be present for the small moments that built a life. Elena looked different now, stronger, despite the heart damage that still required medication and monitoring, more vibrant, like someone who'd been living in shadow and had finally stepped into sunlight. She wore her wedding ring again, though they'd had it resized, a symbolic fresh start, she'd said. What are you thinking? Elena asked, catching him staring. That I'm sitting 18 inches from the most incredible woman I've ever known, Adrian said, and this time I'm not letting that distance stay between us. He reached across the table, his hand open, palm up, an offering, not a demand. Elena looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she smiled, that genuine, full smile that still made Adrian's heart skip, and placed her hand in his, closing the distance. Tell me about the shipment that came in today, Elena said. The one you were stressed about this morning. Adrian blinked, surprised. You want to talk about work? I want you to share your life with me, the good parts and the stressful parts. That's what partners do, right? They don't keep everything compartmentalized. They actually talk to each other. So Adrian told her about the shipment, about the complications and the resolution, and Elena listened, asked questions, offered perspective from a viewpoint he hadn't considered. They talked through appetizers and entrees, their conversation flowing easily, their hands joined across white tablecloth. When dessert arrived, Adrian noticed something. His phone, sitting face up on the table, had buzzed 3 times. Business calls, probably. 6 months ago, he would have answered immediately. Even 3 months ago, he would have at least checked. Tonight, he didn't even glance at it. You're not going to check that? Elena asked, noticing. No. Adrian squeezed her hand gently, because nothing on that phone is more important than being right here, right now, with you. Elena's eyes filled with tears. You really have changed. I had to, Adrian said simply. I almost lost everything that mattered because I forgot how to see what was right in front of me. I'm never making that mistake again. They finished dinner slowly, savoring the food and the conversation and the quiet miracle of being together, not out of obligation or routine, but because they chose each other. Every single day, they chose each other. When they finally stood to leave, Elena paused by the table, looking at the space where her wine glass had sat that terrible night. You know what I think about when I remember that moment? Elena said quietly. What? I think about how drinking poison was easier than trying to warn you one more time. Elena turned to face Adrian fully. I think about how invisible I'd become, how thoroughly I'd disappeared, that death felt preferable to being ignored. Adrian felt the words like knives. Elena, but I also think about what happened after, Elena continued. About you sitting in that hospital room for 3 days straight, refusing to leave. About you calling a therapist before I even woke up. About you learning to braid hair and showing up for breakfast and choosing us over business again and again. She took both his hands in hers. I think about the man I married 7 years ago, the one I'd thought was buried under armor and ambition, and I realize he was there all along. He just needed to almost lose everything to remember who he was. I'm so sorry, Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion. For all of it. For making you invisible, for taking so long to see you, for… I know, Elena interrupted, and I forgive you. The three words hung in the air between them, enormous and impossible and real. You forgive me? Adrian repeated, barely breathing. I forgive you, Elena confirmed. Not because you've erased the past 6 years, you can't, but because you've done the work to understand why it happened and to make sure it never happens again. Because you've shown me through actions, not words, that you're different now. Because our children have a father who shows up, and I have a husband who sees me. Adrian pulled Elena close, burying his face in her hair, his shoulders shaking with silent tears. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me. On us. Elena held him just as tightly. Thank you for giving me reasons not to. They stood like that for a long moment, two people who'd almost destroyed each other through neglect and absence, now choosing presence and connection. The restaurant staff gave them privacy, and Chicago glittered beyond the windows, indifferent to one couple's quiet redemption. Finally, they pulled apart. Adrian cupped Elena's face gently, his thumbs wiping away her tears. I love you, he said. I've always loved you. I just forgot how to show it. But Elena, I'm showing it now, every day, for the rest of our lives. I love you too, Elena said. Even when I hated you, even when I was planning to leave, I loved you. That's why it hurt so much. That's why I'm giving us this chance. Adrian leaned down and kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. Not the passion of their early years, but something deeper. The steady commitment of two people choosing to rebuild after destruction, to create something better from the ruins. When they pulled apart, Elena smiled. Let's go home. To our kids. Our life. Our second chance. Our second chance, Adrian agreed. They left the Aurelius Club hand in hand, leaving behind the ghost of the night that had almost destroyed them. Outside, Chicago's February cold bit at their skin, but Adrian barely noticed. He was too focused on the woman beside him, on the warmth of her hand in his, on the miracle that she was still there, still choosing him, still willing to build a life together. At home, Sophia and Marcus were already asleep, watched over by Vittoria, who'd volunteered to babysit. His mother took one look at their faces and smiled. Good evening? She asked. The best, Elena said softly. After Vittoria left, Adrian and Elena checked on the twins together, straightening blankets and kissing foreheads. Marcus clutched Mr. Buttons in sleep, his face peaceful. Sophia had kicked off her covers completely, sprawled like a starfish across her bed. She does that every night, Elena whispered as they stood in the doorway, watching their daughter sleep. I fix her blankets, and 30 minutes later, they're on the floor again. Then we'll keep fixing them, Adrian said. Every night, together. They returned to their bedroom, to the space they'd slowly reclaimed over 6 months of rebuilding. Adrian no longer slept on the couch. The distance between their sides of the bed had gradually closed until they fell asleep tangled together, more often than not. Tonight was no different. Elena changed into pajamas, took her medications, and climbed into bed. Adrian followed, and she immediately curled into his side, her head on his chest, her hand over his heart. Can you feel that? Adrian asked softly. My heart beating? Yes. It beats for you, for Sophia and Marcus. For this family we're rebuilding. Adrian's arms tightened around her. It almost stopped the night you drank that poison. Not because I was dying, but because I'd realized what I'd almost lost through my own blindness. But you didn't lose it, Elena said. We're still here, still fighting, still choosing each other. Every day, Adrian promised, for the rest of our lives. They fell asleep like that, no distance between them. 18 inches, becoming no inches, becoming two people merged into one partnership. Outside, February snow began to fall, covering Chicago in white, making the city look clean and new and full of second chances. And in a mansion in Lake Forest, a family slept. A mother who'd refused to disappear, even when dying. A father who'd learned that the most important distance to cross wasn't measured in territory or profit margins, but in the space between presence and absence, between seeing and blindness, between who he'd been and who he'd chosen to become. Two children who were learning they could count on both parents, not just one. And a marriage that had been broken so thoroughly it required complete reconstruction, now being rebuilt one choice at a time, one day at a time, one moment of genuine presence at a time. The most dangerous distance in the world isn't across a battlefield. It's 18 inches at a dinner table, if you refuse to reach across it. But Adrian Moretti had learned to reach, every single day, and he would never stop reaching again.